What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we are going to attack this slate. Whoa. Oh, no. We're going to get technology figured out. Don't worry about us.
He didn't tell me the sound was on.
But yeah, we're going to get after this slate. Let's start off, though, talking about, some of the previous games that have been played. We had the 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks earlier in the week. Let me get that sharing. It was a fun game. It was kind of interesting towards the end. It would have been a one score game that would have made it even more like fun to watch and stuff. But we did have the right side of everything for our DraftKings lines, which was cool. When we came down to it, Jordan Mason unfortunately did get his shoulder injured, and that hurt our lines though.
Yeah, that made a lot of people in the fantasy community frustrated. I've especially on prospects because typically if they don't return in the second half, you get rebooted. Well, he came in for one play, got his discounted prop, and then came out, and so prospects was like, "That's
Too bad.
That's all you need." Whereas Underdog rebooted, a lot of other platforms rebooted, so not a lot of people were happy about that. We definitely weren't. We had really good lines in great shape, and he was in a ton of mine at least. And it was just a very disappointing second half from a DFS perspective. But we also had a member in the Discord that ended up taking down on FanDuel, which we don't cover FanDuel this year, but he did have questions and stuff like that. And we were like, you need to have Debo. And he switched his line accordingly. Last second, he ended up getting first out of 74,000 people. That was fantastic to see. Shout out to Roy or the Mini Banana if you know him in the Discord.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun night overall. It was a way more high scoring game than I thought it would be. It was definitely more of a second half burner, I guess, because 41 of these 60 total points came in the second half. But yeah, it was a back and forth affair with a lot of fantasy goodness.
Yeah. Well, I will say also, with the Roy thing, funny enough, for the Mini Banana, he messaged me separately and was like, "Hey, he texted me a message and was like, "Hey, I switched this 2 minutes before lock." He also apparently had a buddy that was tailing him that made $1,000. Roy made 9,000
on his first try.
Yeah, first ever try. So that was really cool to see. I mean, we love doing this, and for even more reasons like that. That's one of the biggest reasons. Like we want to see everybody prosper and do really well. A guy that didn't prosper or do well is DK. He had 10 targets, I think, and 11 targets, and he had 3 catches.
Hit his discounted prop.
That was so sad.
That was somebody I was worried about. That was who I called out as my fade of the night. Didn't feel great about it though, and he also had basically 2 touchdowns. That one he was 2 shoe sizes too big on, and then the other one was a unnecessary. It wasn't a bad call, but it was an unnecessary offensive penalty that called back a 70-yard touchdown, which from a head-to-head, because this week me and Emery in our friend league are going head-to-head, and right now it's a projection of 0.12 different. So it is back and forth. Both of us, excuse me, need a win, and he has DK, so I'm very happy that didn't happen. However, it was definitely upsetting to say the least.
Yeah, you had JSN on the other side of it in our league, and he outscored DK in this matchup. But yeah, it makes me feel better for next week. Like I'm like, okay, well, he's gonna get the targets. At least I don't have to worry about that part.
2 straight bad weeks of just a touchdown would have, a 2-point conversion would have, etc. and so on.
Yeah, looking at the actual stats, I mean, Lockett played really well, but
he salvaged. He didn't have anything through about 2.5 quarters, and then he had that 37-yard reception, and then he came out, and we were like, "Ooh, he may be banged up," and then he
came back
fine,
in and scored the touchdown.
And that's what ended up taking down, the Discord member, because his only Seattle player was Tyler Lockett, and he ended up scoring. Or I mean, he had Geno as well. Apologies, but yeah, it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and then let's go over to our pick sheets. We've been doing this throughout this year, the records and stuff, so we're very transparent on how we've done. There's no reason to not be. And San Francisco won. We both had San Francisco winning. We talked about that on our Thursday Night Football. So we have all greens across the board because everybody picked San Francisco. We also both picked them for our spread picks because we had I think I had a 14-point game and you had a 10-point game out of them. So it made a lot of sense for us to put them in our spread picks. There's currently a game going on in the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Chicago Bears. It says at Chicago, but that's not necessarily true. It's probably more so at the Jacksonville Jaguars because it's in
Yeah, it's
London,
in London.
and that is their home field. Typically for out of country games, they are going to play there next week also. So
Yeah, I mean, with Jacksonville getting back to back in London, that's a huge advantage. I was actually shocked, other than Peter Prisco, with CBS being the only ones to pick Jacksonville, because I felt not strong about it, but I just was like, this is a game that I feel like Jacksonville is going to get back on top. They were
right.
actually underdogs at the start of this week, and they flipped to being the favorites, all the way to 1.5. So it was about a 3-point swing almost in Jacksonville's favor. So the fact that three others are on the other side of it is was pretty surprising. But in terms of picks overall this week, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's not
Mhm.
really many games that a lot of people differ between. Me and Emery, um, just one pick different on the
Yeah.
entire slate, and pretty much between us and the rest of the experts, it's really only 2 to 3, and one of them being Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Indy. I was actually surprised that a
Mhm.
lot of people are on Indy, and then obviously we're taking a big leap of faith with it is out of screen, but the Jets and the Bills, being the only two that picked the Jets, is a very not confident thing, but it's one that typically coaches getting fired, it usually kind of lights a fire under a team. Um, Under this circumstance, the way it went down is very, very interesting, to say the least, very
Right.
unique. So it's not a confident pick, but it's just one that I just went with by default. You got to pick somebody. You can't pick Ty on ones that you're not confident in. That was my thought on that matter.
So the only game that I picked differently is Arizona at Green Bay. I Everybody picked Green Bay, and I went Arizona last week. That worked out for me. They
Yeah, I did.
won. They beat the San Francisco 49ers. I'm sure Dustin, if Dustin is in the chat, which I see him, he had already chatted. He is a Arizona fan, and so I'm sure he'll be excited about that. But I just think Arizona's sneaky, and we talked about them being a little sneaky. Like they're better than at the beginning of the year before we did all this. Like Arizona was one of our teams that's like annoying, like thorn in the side type of team.
Right.
I think in Green Bay is 3-2. Arizona's 2-3. I think they both go to 3-3. And I think that it would be it's a fun matchup, of course, but also on top of that, just getting some man of intelligence. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you. I really appreciate that. But I think they win this game. The next thing I want to look at though is these 5 spread picks. At the moment, Cam is 500. That's really solid. And then I'm up a little bit, but
A little bit.
Jacksonville.
You're having a great year so far with spread. You're
Thank you.
16-10. That's nothing to poo-poo about, no whatsoever. Um, yeah, I mean, this honestly is not a confident week in spread picks. Picking, typically our best 5 of the week, and then we just kind of go from there. Um, but maybe that's the reason that this week actually works out for me, because I've been pretty much 500 the entire year, just going 3-2. You've had a basically 1 week where you went 4-1, and I think you've been positive almost every single week this year, which is why you're ahead so much, which is great to see. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty similar on 3 of the 5. Obviously, we picked San Francisco -3 on Thursday night. We both have Jacksonville at -1.5 now at in London. That's going on right now. So in the chat, if you guys want to keep us posted in that game while we're streaming, that'd be fantastic, just to see how it's going.
Right.
And then Tampa Bay is the same. And then I had New England +6.5. We'll get into some of why we think it'll be a closer game, and why we might be targeting some New England on this side of things today. And then Cincinnati being -3.5. Don't feel great about it. But that's for Sunday Night Football, which was, I don't understand why that was the matchup that they selected, even at the start of the season. Putting the Giants on Sunday Night Football just didn't make any sense to me,
Right.
and that's the game of the night, and it doesn't really feel like it should be.
Yeah, the Giants actually played 2 primetime games this year
Yeah,
then already. Looking at the list though, it's really difficult to find teams that you want because we basically picked almost all favorites except for I picked Arizona. I thought that the Jets were favorites or underdogs, but confidence is key,
Yeah, it's
right?
not
So the
even
Jets are dogs.
even both of us picking the Jets. Typically, it's like if you're picking the dog outright, that would be one of your best five, right? And it's
Mm,
like, no, I don't feel great about
yeah,
the pick.
exactly.
So it's just like I'm not going to force something that wishful thinking kind of thing.
Right. So now let's get into the point where we talk about the weather. I know that there are a few games this week that we had to talk about. Earlier in the week, we were talking about certain players being in our lines and also in our prize pick stuff, but the weather is going to possibly affect them. So looking at the group here, we do have a live game, which is awesome to see. But yeah, Cam, do you have any weather
So
concerns?
really nothing of note. The only game that is actually orange is Arizona and Green Bay, and it's not like it's going to be a absolute shower storm
Hmm.
that we saw Denver versus the Jets, kind of just nonstop pour all game. But it's apparently an inopportune time where it's just gonna only start as soon as the kickoff happens, and there's just kind of scattered showers throughout the game. But we'll keep y'all updated if there is any kind of shift in weather. I was looking at it last night, and it's 70% chance of rain today, and basically all of it is during the game time. So that's one that's going to be very interesting in our regard, because that's not a game that we're typically going to fade. But it is worth noting that this week the under total for this game, it started at 50, it's all the way down to 47. So it went down 3 whole points, which you don't typically see that often, and usually that kind of correlates with bad weather or kind
Right.
of inopportune conditions for football scoring, all that good stuff. So which is kind of makes you a little bit more nervous if you are investing in that game, if you're not investing in the running backs, because obviously that would be more opportune for somebody like James Conner or Josh Jacobs, who are the workhorses in their respective roles.
Right. They correlate a little bit better, basically, than you would see if it was a sunny day that more correlates to the passing game. So I completely agree.
Mhm.
But yeah, so why don't we, since we're a little bit ahead, why don't you give me the 5 highest totals for the whole slate? I know we're not probably going to play any Sunday Mondays, but just looking at the whole slate, because there's a bunch of good ones. There are some very high ones also.
Yeah, so with this week again, there's been some shifts. It seems like every week so far this year that everybody kind of has bet down
Mhm,
like first look totals. But essentially you had the Commanders and the Ravens were 52.5 to start the week. Now they're at 51.5. Dallas has actually flipped to being the highest total at Dallas. Detroit is 52.5.
mhm,
The Cardinals and the Packers, like I mentioned, even though that they did go down 3 points, they are still one of the highest totals. And then the Falcons Panthers at 46.5 went down a point from earlier this week. And then the Colts and Titans is at 43. So that's a big drop after the first four. But yeah, it's not a great week other than the top games to
right.
just kind of hope for a
Attack.
ton of scoring. I mean, our contrarian games of the week are going to sound very, very uncomfortable, being the Texans, Patriots, and the Steelers and the Raiders. That's not one that's just like, ooh, I expect fireworks. It's just
Right.
kind of good spots. It's value, and we'll talk about that when we go over DFS.
Yeah, let's get into some DFS because we are a little ahead, but we can start talking about it. Let me change the first, I believe, let me make sure I say this correctly. I think it's afternoon only is what you had first up, right? Early only,
Earlier
sorry.
only.
I apologize. The afternoon only is a short slate this week, right?
Yeah, it's a 4 game slate for afternoon. It's only 10 total for the main. Very kind of straightforward, and even more because last week there was just kind of a lot of ways to go. This week, for the main perspective, we are really kind of going in 2 different directions. Not opposing each other, but we know the quarterbacks that we want, and basically the direction we go is how we're going to construct our line.
Right.
With the early only, you don't. I mean, that's kind of more so we're gonna have the same factor. It's spin up or spin down,
Mhm.
and the 2 guys up top, obviously Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels going head to head, kind of clones of each other. Jaden Daniels having one of the best starts in history from a rookie perspective, and then Lamar Jackson, playing even better than his MVP year last year. Would he's been incredible. The only problem is for DFS perspective, it's been very uncomfortable trying to figure out the stack because of the inconsistencies of a lot of people. Last week, Emery hit the nail on the head with Zay Flowers hitting 100 yards and 7 receptions. I don't believe he scored though.
No, I don't think so.
But other than that, it's just kind of been up and down for a lot of guys not named Derrick Henry, which typically you don't really want to be stacking your quarterback with somebody that is just straight up just going to get
Right.
25
It's
carries,
basically
no
poaching
receptions.
each other.
Exactly. But it's been working out for both of them. That's why they're two of the highest prices on this early on this slate. Justice Hill has been a very solid PPR back. Last week had a little bit of a down game, but he's always in play, especially if they are playing from behind in some way, shape, or form. Zay Flowers, very reasonable price, especially on early only, because there are really not a lot of receiving options on
Right.
this slate. And then Rashad Bateman, okay, I understand why he's 4,100. If you find that touchdown, he's kind of touchdown dependent, but you got to find value somewhere.
Yeah.
Isaiah Likely being 4,500. Mark Andrews apparently is tight end 3 on his team, all the way down to 3,900. It's very uncomfortable seeing what's happening with him because he is still a very talented tight end. They're just not using him at all. So don't let fantasy misconstrue him being washed or anything of that nature. They're
Ability,
just
for
straight up
sure.
not using him. And it's very strange how it just kind of went from all to nothing. Because I know he looks like he is kind of banged up or coming off an injury.
Yeah.
Especially because last year he broke his leg or his ankle. This year he had a car accident in training camp. Apparently that was way worse than the media were let on. But yeah, being down at 3,900 seems criminal, but it's just something that even if I do play Lamar build, it's something that I'm not really gonna trust.
Right. Trying to figure out who I think you can obviously single stack Lamar. Getting to Zay Flowers is always the guy that you want to get to. I feel like if you're going to go with Lamar, just because he has the upside. Looking at his game, he has to have games of 20 plus points, and I don't think that really happens with any of his other receivers. Derrick Henry has been good, like you said, but Justice Hill is pass catching back if he hits, which he did not last week. But if he gets this 6-8 targets, that'll be something that you can always look to. He had 21 points in that game against Buffalo. But yeah, it's very weird trying to get a Lamar stack, and we've talked about it almost every week that it's still super difficult.
I mean, you even saw on Zay Flowers' game log that he had 3 games of targets. Last week he had 12 targets, but then the other 2 games he had 4 or less, and both of those games he had under 25 yards. And it's just like, can we get some consistency going?
Right, for sure.
He did score against the Raiders in week 2. But yeah, I mean, he's got a very nice floor, especially against Washington, who is kind of, they're still one of the worst secondaries in football, but they really haven't been tested over the last 2 weeks due to that. And it's just a perfect week to kind of
get back at him.
Yeah,
for sure. No, completely agree. Let's go ahead and look at the other side of it because that is a very important game. Jaden is going to be probably pretty popular. We were going to talk about this, but Brian Robinson is out.
Yes.
So that makes it interesting if you want to play Austin Eckler.
He is definitely, worthy of being a, stackable piece the way that, Austin Eckler being on top of being 5,600 and being basically getting all the workload with Jeremy McNichols, which, is what it is.
Yeah.
But Austin Eckler has always been a PPR back friendly for these formats. And this is actually his first game back. Or that's a lie. He did play last week. Was pretty efficient with his touches. 8 touches, 97 yards. Did not score like he did the previous week, but every single game that he's played this year, at least 10 points. So very solid floor. He's very reasonable to be a bring back if you did do a Baltimore. But if you wanted to stack him with Jaden Daniels and a Terry McLaurin, who's been absolutely killing this week too, is perfectly reasonable. I mean, you look at their game log over the last week,
bang,
4 for 100, and then a couple touchdowns, and then last week obviously going 4 for 112. So he's not having the dominant like wide receiver one like you think he would compared to the rest of his receiving corps, but he's still been killing it over the last 3 weeks.
Right.
I mean, Baltimore has been very susceptible to the pass this year, so wouldn't put us to have another great game. Obviously, like you see up there, 31 or 31st against receivers so far this year. And really, he's the only receiver that you can really trust
Right.
with Washington if you are going to do a bring back, or if you're going to do a double or a single, it's going to start with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, kind of similar to Lamar and Zay Flowers.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, Austin Eckler could be your other stack in that, going, Jaden, Austin, and then Terry. I also think that it's interesting dart throws down here at this like 4,000 or below price between Dami Brown, who actually scored the touchdown last week. So he scored the touchdown. Noah Brown, who's been getting snaps.
Yeah, I mean, I have it up in front of me,
Dude.
but I mean, what's uncomfortable is that Terry McLaurin actually had only 67% of snaps last week, and no one else had more than 70. And typically, we've seen multiple kind of receiving rooms where it's just like every single person that's actually playing is playing over 90%. Like
Mhm.
you even see Atlanta where basically Ray McLeod's getting 100% of the snaps because they don't want
Right.
anybody else playing if he is indeed healthy. Well, Washington is just like, just throw a body out there and if it's you, but it's not like there's a priority. Everybody's going to play, or like Terry McLaurin being 67%. It's pretty insane over the last 2 weeks. But obviously, they also were back-to-back blowouts against Arizona, and then last week as well. They are killing it right now, being 4-1, leading the NFC East. So I wouldn't. We obviously, if we circle games on our calendars to come into the year, we didn't expect Washington and Baltimore to be one of the most exciting games
Right, of the
going into
week
Week
for
6.
sure. No, and then, dart throws at Zach Ertz. It's a little uncomfortable, but, he's still getting targets. He's actually gone down in receptions, but he had 8 targets this last week, which is, that's all you can ask for at
Right. Yeah,
3,700,
he just hasn't scored yet this year, but I mean, he's had reasonable amount of targets. He's still his price is fairly moderate, and
Mhm.
the tight end slate as a whole, the position as a whole this year has just been a very big dud
Tough.
outside of like a Brock Bowers.
Mhm.
Or George Kittle. Obviously, he scored 2 touchdowns last on Thursday night slate. And if you do follow us in Discord, the one difference we had was I was kind of leaning more Ayuk. Emery was leaning more Kittle, and that definitely worked out more so in Emery's favor, definitely over the week. So, but getting back to this slate, tight end really not great. So it's kind of like mixing and matching,
Mhm.
correlating what tight end really matters to your stack might be the best way to go.
Right.
Standalone tight ends, there's not really one that I'm just like I feel great about because the one that I actually did was Trey McBride. He's in the worst weather game, so
Mhm.
that's not necessarily a confident having to spend up to 57 for him.
All right. Let's go down to so basically we go from expensive to puke really quick, and
Yeah,
that's
I mean, you can before we even do that, you can look at the rest of the slate, and it's just
yeah,
like
let's check it out.
Jalen Hurts, 10-point favorite, 9.5-point favorite against Cleveland, but they're a pretty solid defense. Don't really love it. CJ Stroud without Nico Collins, all the way up to 7,000 against New England. They've actually been really good against the pass.
Right.
Christian Gonzalez, shout out to
Stud,
him. He's been
absolute stud.
killing it this year. And then you have Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, which both good matchups, but not great weather. And then on top of that, Jordan Love getting both Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs back.
Right.
So that puts a little bit more stress on spending all the way up to 7,000 for Jaden Reed
Which I'm still willing to do,
or
but
willing to do a Dontavian Wicks, which
right.
I was actually willing to go back to this week. However, not if everybody's healthy kind of thing. And then Tucker Kraft is all the way up there as well. Baker Mayfield, tough matchup. Would love Flacco, but one tough
He's not gonna
matchup,
start.
he's not going to start.
Yeah.
So, and then all of a sudden, after 59, way big drop all the way down to the PQ range, which is what we're about to go over.
Yeah, let's talk about Will Levis will be the starter. We got confirmation of that, so that's good. We're going to talk about the Tennessee stack. We talked about it a little bit, I believe, on our other show this earlier in the week, but we will dive in a little bit more this week.
Yeah. So with Will Levis, it's uncomfortable. We want to make you uncomfortable because that's what DFS is. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's all about matchups and where you're heading and where you're going.
Oh.
And Indy has just been absolutely atrocious against the pass. Each of the last 3 weeks, over 300 yards allowed to quarterbacks, which on DraftKings you get 3-point bonus.
Right.
So most of those guys were 5,700 and below, being Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, and then last week with Justin Fields as well. All being in the mid 5K range.
Yeah.
All smashed based on their value. And Will Levis is more of the same this week. And there's not a single player above 6,000 for Tennessee. They're favored.
Yes.
And so it's a good game environment to play. The only thing was just hoping that the weather held up, and there's no concerns right now. So spending 4,800 for a quarterback, obviously he has not played well. He's coming off an injury.
Yeah,
It is scary.
let's look at
But
his
guess
stuff.
what? His ownership is low because of that.
1.5. That should not be counted in his average, but it is obviously.
But I mean, you even look
Otherwise.
at week 3 against Green Bay, where they played from behind.
Mm-hmm.
From a box score perspective, not impressive at all. But if you get 16.6 points for somebody 4,800 as a quarterback, it opens up so much room to spend elsewhere that you're going to feel really good about it.
This week is the week where you need to do stuff like this because there is no value at other positions. It's slowly opening up, but truly there's not a ton of value at wide receiver. You have to go down to very uncomfortable plays for the most part. I did want to talk about Tony Pollard. He is going to be one of the chalkiest players on the. He has been pretty dang good, and that's why he's going to come out chalky because they are projected to win. Indy hasn't been good on defense on either side of the ball, on either rushing or passing. So if you look at it,
we always talk about 5-box running backs.
Terrible.
The only thing that's not about him being a 5-box running back is that he does split pretty significantly with Tajay Spears. And so last week, obviously, he has 24 opportunities against Miami in a very ugly, hard to watch game. But other than that, I mean, he's been 20 opportunities 3 of the 4 weeks. And then Green Bay was such a negative game script. Even though it was a good matchup, they were down so fast, so early that he really couldn't, return value. But his price hasn't gone up. I mean, you look 59, 6,000.
Yeah.
Again, this week, 6,000. I don't know what it's going to take to boost this, but he also doesn't have really value that's going to warrant like a Jordan Mason. It's just like, oh, it's another week of 40% ownership of Jordan Mason. So he will be a popular running back today, but he is worth a look even in that regard.
I think on early only, he's a guy that I want to get to for that reason that there's just less guys and there's less value. And he's only 6,000, which is comfortable range rather than going with 2 stud running backs on this slate. So then the next guys, like you said, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, all these guys can have a good day. That's not a problem. You look at Calvin Ridley, has gone for 24 points this year. That was against the Jets, which is a hard defense. The other 3,
it's just been
tough,
really tough.
Yeah.
And what's actually funny to me was that when I was looking through, we actually put our prop video out a little bit later this week, and that was the fault of my own. But Calvin Ridley, when his line came out, that was my favorite line. And then you sent me the values that Vegas has on him, and it was plus money.
Oh, yeah.
For a line that was lower to be under. I'm sorry, to be over, which means that the money was on the under. And it's just like,
yeah,
I don't understand it. The coach speak is there that they want to get him more involved. Great matchup. They're at home. They're favored. To get 43, now it's up to 47.
46
finally.
and a half or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think he's in a great spot this week. And
fair enough.
If everybody's on the under, obviously his line's been boosted a little bit, but I don't think a lot of people are going to want to spend 57 for him. So that even on an early on the slate when there's only 6 games, I think he's a really solid tournament play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, guys. I know y'all are in the chat. The Gale is here, week 6, baby. Should be a good Sunday. That's the plan. We're going to make some money this week. And then Dustin said that the Jags are up 3-0. Cam Little, 30-yard field goal. Sorry, I'm supposed to be doing the chat. That's my bad.
No, you're good.
But yeah, so Calvin Ridley, talk about DeAndre because he is so cheap at 5,100. He is getting somewhat targets. He had 11 in the last 2 weeks. That is viable at this price, and he has the upside of going for 19, possibly 20 points if he has a game.
And the first
still
2
Indy.
Weeks,
it's
the
still
first
Indy.
2 weeks were kind of a wash just because he was coming off an MCL injury to start training camp. He got hurt very early on, and we thought he was going to miss games. He actually played. And we were like, we're going to stay away and let him kind of get back into it. And obviously his snap share and his production obviously reflected that, but
still
had a really solid game against Green Bay when they were playing catch up. And then last week, obviously they weren't throwing much because only the run game was working. And on top of that, Will Levis did get hurt. So it was Mason Rudolph at the helm.
Yeah, he's going to be the first guy out. Is the thing with this offense is like when they go to extra tight ends, he's actually coming out of the game. He only had 32% of the snaps this last week. He had 46 the week before.
Yeah, he hasn't hit 50 this year so far, which obviously there's a bye week. There's another week of rest. He should be getting kind of back to probably what would be called maybe 85-90%
Right.
now. But being 5,100 in a great matchup, great spot. If you are going to double a Will Levis, it's really easy to just click
Bang bang.
bang bang,
Yeah.
and it's going to be so unpopular to go with the Will Levis double that even though it's a chalky way to do it, it's going to be very different from the field.
Right. I think that this right here is where I would just pick two. I would say you can still pick Tony. He's getting like 3 targets a game, but he doesn't have a lot of 4-ish targets a game. So that makes it worth paying that price for him as a pass catcher. But it's interesting to see
The
where you want
only
to go.
problem I have, and typically when we do builds and stuff like that, you make one decision with a double and then a bring back, and then half your line's filled out.
Right.
I don't feel good about any indie player
Right.
now because Michael Pittman Jr. was on the verge of being put on IR. He's playing today. How does that happen? I don't know. That doesn't mean I want to play him, but it's just like that doesn't make me feel good because there's no value. Josh Downs was DNP the first 2 days. He's playing. Jonathan Taylor's out, but it's Trey Sermon, and obviously he's 6,000. So it's like,
Well, he was also having some issues earlier in the week. He actually got cleared.
yeah, he had a collarbone injury, I believe, and so it was like, oh, it's gonna be Tyler Goodson. Okay, I guess I'll spend 5,400 for Tyler Goodson. I obviously his price was baked or inflated a little bit because of
Right.
the potential injury and him missing, but yeah, it's just there's no value. I really had a not a hinkling, but just A.D. Mitchell being 39. I was like, if both
Not against
Michael
it.
Pittman or Downs were out, I was like, this is a good spot to, even though they're first against receivers and Tennessee is a really good secondary.
Well,
I would have been willing to put him in, and now it's just like, even on an early only slate, which it's 6 games, you can start breaking a little bit of rules the smaller the slate gets.
mm-hmm.
If I did go the Tennessee double route, I don't even know if I would want to force anybody as a bring back.
Alec Pierce was an interesting name if I didn't see the price.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous for the price.
He had no catches through 3.5 quarters last week, and then ended for 130 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not
do?
confident in anybody, like Cam said. And also when Anthony Richardson's at the helm, you just have to it's going to be a 50-yarder, and that's how it's going to win.
We've seen some weird takedowns this year. I mean,
Mhm.
the millionaire lineup last week was a Lamar by himself,
Right.
with a double bring back to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. No, I mean, it correlates, but it really doesn't.
Right.
And it still worked out for the guy that hit $1 million. We saw week 1 where there was a double New Orleans with Jawan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed without the quarterback, and it worked out, and he won $1 million. So obviously, rules are meant to be broken, and you don't have to follow it to a T. Usually, we do it for a good practice and have been successful doing it, but in that regard, it's kind of tough to have confidence. This game is a lot more interesting to talk about.
Let's get weird because Spencer Rattler is going to be the starter. He has $4,000 with Derek Carr out. We expected that earlier in the week. Jake Haener was actually the backup on the depth chart, so he's not actually the backup. Let's see that guy, and then at tight end we want Jawan or Foster Moreau, both probably. It looks like there's the team basically.
Yeah, and I know we were waiting on Taysom Hill status, but it doesn't sound like he's going to play.
Yeah, I think he's out. I think he's listed as out.
Is he really?
I think so. Yeah, he's listed as out. So
that was as of yesterday. There was still speculation and stuff like that. But yeah, there's very rarely do you have the opportunity to play quarterback for minimum price. I've done it basically every time there has been an opportunity to do so, and normally it works out because all you need to go 3x value, which is more than what you can ask for, is 12 points.
Yes.
And I even brought up the story on the first look of Clayton Tune a couple years ago. He has a rushing touchdown in the first quarter, gets concussed and plays a quarter and a half, but he had 12 points. I still like 3 or 4x my money on that specific line because spinning or going all the way down to him made everything else work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we did. And you even texted me yesterday, we're going to get uncomfortable on the stream tomorrow and it's going to be centered around Spencer Rattler because typically you want to stack quarterbacks that are just kind of pocket guys that don't scramble. They don't do a lot of rushing upside. He's not necessarily one that we're going to be banking on 10 to 12 carries for 50 yards and a rushing touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can break some rules when you're minimum price because you don't have to worry about going all the way up to Chris Olave, a Rashid Shaheed, or an Alvin Kamara for that matter. Because other than that, there's not really a ton of confident looks. Obviously, Juwan played today because he will do recency bias and he had a great game. Alvin Kamara, he's been Alvin Kamara.
Mhm.
I mean, look at the target share. Each of the last 2 weeks, obviously 9 and 8 targets respectively. Even when he's not efficient, he's efficient from a
I
fantasy perspective.
I would expect his touches to go up just in a situation where you have a young quarterback. So I
Mhm.
think that, touch wise, he'd probably go up in the rushing category, but I think his receiving might actually come down. Just for the fact that, they're going to try to run the ball and get the game like that way.
Right.
But you can still think about it as like you have a $4,000 guy. He just needs to score, say, one touchdown, and you're feeling pretty confident in that. He also has some rushing upside as a player in general. So that's
Mhm.
always good to have as a backup when he's coming in for this type of stuff. He's playing a Tampa Bay defense that is still beat up. I mean, Vita Vea is back, but Antoine Winfield's still out. They're not the same defense of old. I just expect this to be a game where Spencer Rattler can hopefully, run for 25 yards, 30 yards, get it floor, and then possibly score one touchdown. I feel pretty confident
Yeah,
in his
and
score
that's
at that
all
point.
you need at 4,000, and everything else, it's just even icing on the cake from there.
Right.
So Lobby is somebody that we talked all week about. We're gonna get him the ball more, and so that's kind of what really increased me wanting to play him. I'm actually really intrigued on what his ownership will be today, just because his price is not a discount. Like we talked about Calvin Ridley being 57
Mhm.
in a good matchup in a good spot. Well, Chris Olave's in a good spot, but he's almost $1,000 more. And on top of that, coming off a very rough game on Monday Night Football. But I mean, his target share has been fine.
Mhm.
It's just been Rashid Shaheed getting the deep ball each of the last 3 weeks or 3 times this year and having a really strong performance. And he's been outscoring him as the wide receiver one in this offense.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he's 1,000 cheaper. So a lot of people are going to flock to him because of that regard. But Chris Olave, very interesting. I'm intrigued by it. Obviously, we saw what Drake London did. They allowed 500 yards, a franchise record, to Kirk Cousins on Thursday Night Football last week. Banger of a game. It's just kind of one of those spots that we want to attack again. They're at home, good game environment. Um, yeah, really, there's not really one that I would just kind of disregard at all in the New Orleans offense, other than it's really hard to get to Jamal Williams
Right.
or having faith in a Cedric Wilson. But I mean, if you wanted to go all the way down to 31, Juwan Johnson, I don't feel great about him. He's not going to be in every single one of my lines, but 3,000, that's the fourth.
Right.
That would just be you could spend whatever you want to on that. And obviously, he was in the optimal line week 1 because no tight end really played well,
Yes.
and he scored.
And he
And
scored
then
the
he
touchdown.
had no targets the next 2 weeks, and then he had 2 for 13, very unpedestrian. And then last week on the showdown slate, caught all 5 targets, 31 yards, return value based on what his price was, and then his price actually went down from what it would be on any kind of main Thursday to Monday slate. He's the cheapest he's been, and he's coming off of his what I would call the best game and most productive game of the year so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say also Spencer Rattler did have some reports that he said if Olave is on the field, I'm gonna get this guy the ball. I
Exactly.
thought those were good reports, obviously for Chris Olave, and also for Spencer Rattler, knowing that he has comfortability with a number one target. That that's always a thing for a young quarterback, like finding your guy, getting in a rhythm and stuff like that. Well, if you know who you want to throw the ball to, and you're just gonna be like, all right, get open, I'll pepper you. It's not the worst idea in the world. I also think with Shaheed, it's a boomer bust guy. He's had a lot of targets obviously this year, but he's still boomer bust. His big plays are happening, 59 yards, 70 yards, 43 yards. Like if that happens this game and you don't have him, well, that's like every other week. I feel like with him, that's
Yeah.
just how it is.
I mean, and what's interesting with Spencer Rattler, I mean, you look at prize picks right now, his fantasy projection or his over underline is 13 points.
Right.
And it's like, if that's the line, you need to be hammering him even more because they're already baking in. He's going to get 3x. Are you going to think he's going to get more than that or less than that? That doesn't mean we're going to pick the over. But if
Right.
that's the line, sign me up for him at $4,000.
For-
And, we're going to be talking about him all day in early only main slates. Even if we get into Sunday, Monday, I mean, he's a guy that just opens up so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Which quarterback would you like to start the build with? Because that is all of our quarterbacks for early only.
So early only, the way I kind of thought about attacking it is just we're going to play two lines and
Hmm.
we're going to do one expensive and we're going to do one inexpensive. And if we really find a line where it's just like there's two guys and we're trying to decide and we like both options,
Just double it.
we might just play the third line
Yeah.
like that. So, but to make it first, let's be a little bit more comfortable and we'll do a Baltimore stack.
Yeah, I completely agree. Baltimore is my most confident stack on this slate itself. We're gonna go with Zay because Zay is the
And
main.
I mean, you look at the receiving options. There's not much. Again, there's not much to spend up on the early on this slate. But obviously, Nico is on IR now. AJ Brown coming off a hamstring injury, so it's a lot of re-risk injury. It is
Yes.
against Cleveland, plus they're 10-point favorites. So okay, Stephon Diggs. Obviously, I think the ownership would be more than it should be today because of the fact that he is now the default wide receiver one for Houston, but it's expensive to get to. Honestly, New England's been pretty solid against the pass. And then Mike Evans, obviously the narrative of him going against Marshawn Lattimore, trying to get his 100th touchdown. People are going to want to play him. But honestly, he has not played well against New Orleans over his last 7-8 games. His sample size has been pretty pedestrian for somebody that you need to spend up to. Marvin Harrison, bad weather game, but decent game environment. But he also is one that just kind of, for whatever reason, just cannot get the consistent target and volume that somebody like Malik Neighbors is getting, which don't understand it really. But also that has a lot to do with Arizona's play calling and what have you.
Right.
Jaden Reed, we talked about one of our props of the week, 7,000, and then everything else is below. Really easy to kind of spin around. We're probably going to be living in the mid tier range on this slate for the receivers, and we'll just kind of see what we build from there.
Yep. So I think this is obviously a good start between the two. We can grab some other players. I think let's grab our defense because we kind of have our defenses figured out for the week. There's like 3 options. Most of
And two
them
of them
under
are on this slate.
3,000. Yeah, I was gonna say they're not even on here. Our favorite one was the Patriots because they're 2,400. They're playing Houston without Nico. It's going to be an interesting situation. I want to see what happens. So we'll throw them in there.
I mean, it's uncomfortable because they're 6.5 point dogs. But I mean, if you click on their game log, I mean,
They're
they've been a
solid.
very top floor. I mean, 6 game. They have 2 games over 10. Obviously, you it's not ideal to have negative points on a defense, but when you're the cheapest defense on the slate, I just need 5. Can you give me 5? And obviously, they put up sacks. 3 of the 5 games have at least 3 sacks. 3 games they have at least 2 turnovers. So they're actually producing pretty well for defense. And I think Houston being banged up the way they are, I just don't see them scoring over 30. And if they don't, you can kind of bake in some sacks and maybe ideally some turnovers, and you just don't put me negative like you did Carolina. Obviously, week 1 we were hammering them being the cheapest defense at home against New Orleans, and that obviously did not work out. They had negative points, dropping 47 on them. So
Right.
I just don't see that scenario here. It's going to be more of a grinded out game between both teams, like a 24-10 kind of game.
Hmm.
And if that's the case, I think New England's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah. Next, going to the running back position. We're gonna, of course, we want to spend up on some, but if you look at this slate, getting to Saquon Barkley against Cleveland, that's a good defense. That's not as comfortable. Derrick Henry's been really good against Washington. He is an option on this slate for sure. Alvin Kamara, if you think that his volume will go up and he's still going to be able to get the receiving work, he's perfectly fine. But we're actually going to drop down to Josh Jacobs here at 6,700 against Arizona. He's just in a good matchup in a running a game total that's good. Plus, it's going to be raining. They're going to be handing the ball off. If it's really raining like we expect it to, he will get a lot of touches. Last week in a pretty close game versus the Rams.
Yeah, so like again with Arizona, they've been a defense that we're going to target all year, but they've actually been worse against the run than they have against the pass. I mean, with Detroit over 200 all-purpose yards to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, the following week against Washington where they were blown out 42-14, 4 rushing touchdowns allowed, over 200 yards again to running backs, and then last week against Jordan Mason, he didn't score, but he's averaging 6.4 yards a carry,
Right.
and obviously it was kind of an uncomfortable game from a DFS perspective if you did invest in a lot of 49ers that were not named Brandon Ayuk. But 3 straight games where they're just giving up a ton of chunks on the ground. Josh Jacobs only scored 1 time this year. It actually happened to be last week, but he's getting all the work. And until Marshawn Lloyd returns and he's healthy, there's just really no one to compete with for touches. And on top of that, being a home favorite, on top of that, possible weather, it just is all in Josh Jacobs' favor. He is a 5 box running back, one of the few on the entire slate.
Yes.
So being 6,700, I'm willing to spend that.
I was gonna sorry. In the chat, Samuel asked, "Hey guys, looking for 3 prize picks players," and then also said Emery had said Hubbard for 60.5 rushing yards. He went up to 66.5. So if you got it and watched our videos and got in our Discord, you would have got that early. But if you didn't, it's now at 66.5. And the question was, do you still like the prop? Yes and no, I guess. Basically, the reason that the prop was so good was because with the research and stuff, he had 95 plus yards, 3 games out of the 4. He's hit it 4 out of 5 times. I think to be comfortable, I liked it when it was at 63.5 was where I was a little bit more comfortable. 66.5 is pushing it.
Mhm.
So what do you think?
I mean, again, for the reasons that Emery mentioned, all 5 games this year, Atlanta has allowed over 70 rushing yards to
Right.
an individual player, and he has hit that line in 4 straight, even though it's up to 66. And on top of that, most of those games was north of 95.
Right.
So he's been hitting it. On top of that, Jonathan Brooks is not returning or yet this week.
Mhm.
So it's definitely a prop I'm willing to do. It might not be the best prop of the day anymore, like you called out a couple of days ago, but it's still worth playing for sure if you're doing a 6 pick. Also did want to point out Josh Jacobs, his mentioning him on the stream right now, his fantasy score still has not gone up. It's still only 13.5. Very, very reasonable to me. And again, it's a PPR format. He's only hit that in 2 of the 5 games, but a lot of that has to do with him not scoring until last week.
Right.
But it's a good game environment for him. And then also, I wanted to mention Chris Olave. He didn't have a prop all week from a receiving perspective because Spencer Rattler's there, and
Right.
just don't know what you're going to put it. He's only at 49 yards, and I just feel like that's way, way too low. I think I would have forced you to make that one of our favorite props if that was out on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But it being under 50 yards, I think is pretty insane.
Yeah.
So that's one that I would mention as well.
He's got to throw it to somebody, right? And Olave is the guy that he's been talking about. Good morning, Gary.
And even if you didn't like that and you wanted to mention Rashid Shaheed because he's been outperforming him, he's at 39.
Yeah.
So it's just like pick one, whoever your favorite one is. I think both can hit over. But today I actually prefer Chris Olave as a contrarian. But it is what it is. This is a different platform, different perspective.
Right,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
those are a couple I want to mention. Calvin Ridley was another that, even though it's plus money, it's
Yeah.
not great value. Very good spot for him. And then Bijan touchdown, if it's even money, I still really like that because Carolina's allowed 10 touchdowns to running backs this year, most in the NFL. CeeDee Lamb, until
his receiving yards were great.
Yeah, his receiving yards were great. I think it's to 89 or 90 now. I still like it.
Yeah, me too.
I still like it, man.
It's a little nerve wracking.
Yeah.
That's we're pushing it, guys. That's getting to a little bit crazy.
So hopefully you hit that 6 for 6.
Mm.
With some of that. If you do need a couple last guys in, but we'll be in Discord doing any kind of last minute lines and stuff like that. If you guys did want to tune in and follow those.
Yeah, and Sam, if you get a chance, just get in on our picks earlier, and also you can ask us in there. We're gonna send picks in our Discord if you're in there earlier in the week because they will be better value wise. Right. We'll try to catch the value early so that we can get some picks in and make it a little bit prettier. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so going to the rest of this line, I'm sorry. Arizona, did you want to force a bring back in this line, or would you like to stay?
Well, before we even answered that, I actually had a question of what Washington player were we going to bring back?
That's what I meant to do.
Because, Terry and Austin Eckler are the 2 obvious ones. Eckler, it fills out our running. Terry McLaurin, obviously coming off 3 games, great. Fantasy production, completely fine, spinning up to 64 for him. But also, there's not a lot of very confident running backs on this slate. So if you wanted to knock off that second spot, I'm fine doing that as well.
No, let's throw Terry in there.
Okay.
I think Terry makes the most sense. I completely forgot to bring the bring back for the first game. Did you want to bring back for the Arizona side, or would you just say that Josh Jacobs is going to pound the ball and run the clock out?
The problem is there's not great value
On
anywhere that
Arizona?
with Arizona, and so the most confident player if prices did not matter probably would be James Conner. One, because Green Bay has been terrible against running
That's
backs,
expensive.
and on top of that, there's just not like Marvin Harrison a couple weeks ago. 5 hits in that and really
Right.
just doesn't get targeted even from behind the whole game. James Conner has been steady for the 5 games over 14 points. He is another workhorse running back. If it is also bad weather, completely fine getting there. But him being 68, I don't know if he can fit. So what I would say is if he's the last man in, cool. But I'm not going to force him in.
Okay. Then where would you like to go next, game wise
Hmm.
or player wise?
So let's figure out tight end real quick.
Okay. I think
Because obviously there's like 2 options, or we're spending all the way down. Basically a couple of options that we like. Up top, Trey McBride. Obviously Dallas Goedert's 52, but both Devontae Smith and AJ Brown are back this week, so
right,
a
of
little
course.
nerve wracking to get there. Tucker Kraft, 2 touchdown game coming off. Luke Musgrave also on IR now, so he has no competition for snap share touches from the tight end perspective. But Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson are both back. So from a target perspective, maybe he goes back to his 5 to 6.
Right.
It's kind of tough. I might prefer to spin down. Obviously, there's a couple of options that we like.
Kate Otten is one of the options that we're going to talk about. He's been and
He just hasn't scored.
has,
But
but
when you're coming down the 3K range, it's really touchdown dependent. But 2 of the last 3 weeks, and this is why we like targeting him on Thursday Night Football last week, was because he came off 89 targets.
mhm.
Last week, he had 3 for 44. It was surprising how little they threw it based on how it felt. The game
Right.
was just back and forth and stuff like that. Baker was having a hell of a game, but just still ended up with under 200 yards. But he hit his over very early in the game.
Right.
So very fine getting to him. And then if you want to go all the way down to Juwan, it's okay. But Kate Otten is somebody that I'm willing to play.
Yeah, I think Kate Otten is the guy I want to go with.
Okay.
He makes the most sense. He is the best floor for his price by far. On this slate, in my opinion, just because unless you want to spend all the way up, I think he has the best floor for his price. Next up, just kind of going to our either receiver. Do you want to bring back off of this game?
I'm fine doing that.
Going
but
to New Orleans.
It's not gonna be the guy you want.
It's fine. Who is it?
Chris Olave.
Perfect.
6,600, basically live in the 6K range with this build, but leaves about 5,000. But at the same time, we might have to switch something out because I know that there's not much value in the 3K range, and that's what we're gonna have to do if we end up going with one of those 6K running backs.
Yeah, there's some. Hold on. Let's get down there. Check it out. 39. Baltimore. Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to force in a guy, so just want to see what you think about putting Tony Pollard in there.
Okay.
Because I think, he's probably the best play on the slate. Just if we're going to build like a cash type of build, like I think Tony Pollard should probably be in your build, leaving 4,100 on the board. So yeah, like you said, 30. Well, let's see what's 4,100. Anything good?
So to be honest,
Double.
one of the things I did bring up and mention because Drake May is having his debut, his first start today. I think one of those New England players is going to return excellent value. I just don't know which one.
Okay.
2 of the last 3 games, Demario Douglas over 8 targets. He's been doing well. Jalen Polk, he had the what would have been game-winning touchdown if he knew how to plant his feet. And it could be a rookie on rookie connection. But basically, everybody's cheap. The most expensive one is Demario Douglas. So that could be a last guy in to try to somewhat correlate. Once again, want to mention Ramondre is out as well. So there is no kind of workhorse role. It's going to be Antonio Gibson.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much it. So just worthy of a name. And it is worth mentioning that Jalen Polk, from a main slate perspective, is the 5th highest value on RotoWire with 7.94 projected. at 3,600, I'm willing to take a bite at that if you want to.
Jalen Polk is first on the early only.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's I'm down to do that. That seems like a reasonable play, and he's gets a perfect fit into this line. 3,600. We have $5 extra $100. Do you want to go up anywhere? I know there's actually a better correlation with our defense. If we wanted to go up to Tennessee,
Yeah, that's a good point. On top of that,
hello.
Anthony Richardson is back, and obviously he's been having a bad year in terms of turnovers, not protecting the football. Willing to get up there, and obviously we like New England today. I don't know if I love them enough to be 100% on them.
Fair enough. Yeah,
So if we
absolutely.
are playing two lines, sure we'll have one of New England, but if we have extra money to spend, I'm willing to play Tennessee.
Yeah, I didn't expect to get under 4,000 with our next player, so that worked out kind of nicely. So this is our build for our expensive guys. I think that this is
And
an
one last
interesting.
thing I did
Good.
want to say with Jalen Polk, last week he had 100% of the snaps.
Mhm.
So his snap share has increased every single week, and so he went up to 80% week 4, and then 100% week 5. Obviously, the production, if you look from the fantasy perspective, he's not scoring a ton, but look at his targets: 6 and
Mhm.
7 targets on a very low volume passing offense. Now with Drake May, there should be a little bit more urgency to have some chunk plays.
Right,
And
push
if
it.
there is going to be any chunk plays, he is the most likely one to benefit from that.
Right.
So I just wanted to point that out before we moved on to the next build.
Completely agree with that. But I really like this build. Everybody in this line makes a lot of sense in my personal opinion. I think now we need to go puke, and puke is the actually I'm not even feeling that way. Truly, funny enough, like I'm not even it's not that kind of puke week. Like I'm okay with going to $4,000. Like give me Spencer Rattler at $4,000 and just say, all right, now do whatever you want with the line because you have extra money to spend. Oh my goodness. Where
So my thing is, I know you were saying, and this was kind of like a cliffhanger, or just kind of a tease. But I know you said I'm going to make you uncomfortable. That was on the main slate. How uncomfortable are you willing to get on the
less
this slate, because there's just not really anything that we're trying to force a spend up on?
less uncomfortable?
Okay. So with that being said, are we doing a double or are we doing a single?
I'd probably do a single, but
Okay.
you
So
can
my preference would be Chris Olave if we're going to do a single. But if you wanted a second man in, being a very cheap Juwan Johnson, very reasonably priced but chalky Rashid Shaheed, or all the way up to Alvin Kamara at 7,700, all those are viable as a secondary option. I don't know if you want to in this build.
let's do it.
Um,
Let's do it. I think it
okay,
seems fun. That seems like fun.
talk you into it. I'm
Yeah,
loving it.
I think that's cool. One guy I want to talk about that we haven't really said anything about is Bucky Irving. We are
Yes.
going to be if we're playing New Orleans, there has to be a bring back, and Bucky Irving is the starter because I believe Rashad White is ruled out completely now. I
Yeah,
can go check it.
scroll up just
Yeah, let me go
to
check it.
confirm. It sounded like
Doubtful.
he's
Okay,
doubtful.
not
Okay,
yet. Not
still
ruled out
not
yet.
ruled out yet, but obviously the doubtful word is trending towards not playing. Every single week, but outformed him from a
Efficiency.
efficiency
Yeah.
standpoint. I was hoping that he would have a good week to prove himself, because he did have the game costing fumble on
Mhm.
Thursday night where they lost the ball in plus territory, about to go up 6 at minimum. And he fumbles the ball. They don't get the ball back and they lose the game. That's always a tough thing to overcome. But, Rashad White being doubtful, eventually being ruled out, there's no one else other than Sean Tucker, really, who's finally getting, is activated on, I guess, game day rosters. But really,
Right.
it's going to be the Bucky Irving show. Him being 5,400, very, very good value.
Yes.
So I'm willing to do that as a bring back. Obviously, we played Kate Auden earlier. But those are probably my two preferences if we are going to do any kind of bring back or ownership or exposure to the Tampa game.
Yeah, I actually would like to just shove him in and see how it goes, and then if we have to pay up, we can pay up, obviously,
Gotcha.
and move it around. Do you have a receiver that you have to have? I
Not really.
I
I mean,
mean,
Baltimore and Washington is by far the highest total on this
right.
early on this slate. So really, that's kind of the direction I was going to lean, is Zay Flowers. But just because we're picking Zay Flowers in both lines, that isn't like he is for sure. This is our stand. He is going for 100
Right.
yards, like you might have felt last week. But I'm still fine doing that,
You could also
and
just throw Terry in there with him, if you wanted
that's
to, I
fine.
feel like, and just go like this and bang, like,
And
what
then we go to cheap defense. This time, let's play New England, because we ended up not playing them last time.
Okay.
still 55 left.
Yeah, I feel good about that,
I
honestly.
mean, here's the deal. Like, are we going all the way down at tight end? We can go all the way up and still have some money. What do you want to do?
If I go all the way up, I'm left with 5,300, and I know exactly who that makes work. That is Mr. Antonio
Yeah,
Gibson, and he is
and he correlates.
correlated with your Patriots defense. I mean, yeah, why not,
Come
right?
on.
I think it
I know
makes
we got some Patriots friends, so y'all better be
yeah.
happy about that one.
Where you at, Vic? Where you at, Griff? I know y'all hopefully y'all are in the chat. But yeah, no, this seems like it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Spencer Rattler double stack if you're gonna double. Don't think you have to. I don't
No,
think you have to.
you don't have to,
But
especially if he's minimum price. But I think it's worth noting because Chris Olave and Kamara, I think that's going to be one of the least popular ways to double if somebody plays Spencer Rattler. Because from a main slate perspective, I don't expect him to have more than 9% ownership.
right,
And those that have the 9, consider that 100. Everybody's going to be doing a Olave and Rashid, or Jawan and Rashid,
right.
Jawan and Olave. I don't think many are going to double spend up for the most expensive New Orleans options, but I think that's the most comfortable way to me to build if you're going to have to do it.
Yeah, I think you could take Kamara out of this line or and then go. I don't even know. Let's see. I mean, we could probably just do it real quick. Maybe if you go all the way down to Tony, you have $1,700. You could get away from Gibson. You could get away from certain different things. I don't know. Is there anything that you want to just like
I mean,
spitball?
it's worth noting like
Jaden Reed
that it
is,
fits Jaden Reed,
and that would be Trey McBride, Jaden Reed,
or Josh Jacobs. I mean, between the two, do you have a preference from a DFS perspective if price doesn't matter?
Jaden Reed.
You do? Okay.
I
I might lean the opposite.
think
However,
it's close.
I
That is
understand
so close.
your reasoning for doing it, but you are able to afford both. And then on top of that, it correlates because we did invest in Trey McBride on this
Right.
build, so
Plus-
having that skinny.
Plus, Jaden Reed's going over 65 receiving yards, so all of our lines hit from Discord. We put him in Price Picks, actually, he was on Underdog. He was at 58.5 earlier in the week. So hopefully those hit. We also did it on Prize Picks, I believe. But yeah, that was a cool line. Let's go to early only because we're getting close on time.
Yeah, you mean afternoon?
That's exactly what I meant.
No, I picked up what you're putting down, but honestly, the afternoon only slate, I love it because 3 of the total that we were talking about are in this out of the games. It's really easy to be like, this is the game that I'm investing in, and it's gonna be very, very fun.
It is tripping. It is tripping balls. Hold on 1 second. There we go. All right.
All right.
Yeah, the Baltimore-Washington game is not on the slate, so that also, we automated that one.
On top of that, there's no, minimum price quarterback or puke stack. That was my two puke options, which was Will Levis and Spencer Rattler. On top here, really the only starting quarterback I believe that is below 5,000 is Aiden O'Connell, and he might be without both Devontae and Jacoby Myers.
Right.
So yeah, there's value to have Trey Tucker at 42.
Brock
Bowers now is the most expensive tight end because he deserves it, because he's good, and everybody should have been on him like we were in the offseason.
He's right.
But there's one quarterback on this slate that I really want to play. Honorable mention to Justin Fields because he's still under 6,000, but it's Dak against Detroit. Detroit has just been incredibly bad against quarterbacks and receivers in general, and really the only way that they kind of salvage from having somebody having a smash day is just they hold on to the ball the entire time,
right?
Which is viable. It's a way that could frustrate and upset us this week, but it's very self-explanatory because they are one of the best teams in the NFL against running backs. We're number one before Kenneth Walker had 3 touchdowns, and I don't know if that's the same anymore, but they're still one of the best. So Dallas will be passing more. They're home dogs in good game environment. Dak loves to play catch up. So if that is the case, and he flirts with 50 passing attempts like he did against Baltimore, where they were playing from behind, and he gets 33 fantasy points, it's incredible what he can put up, and where the ball is going. Obviously, Brandon Cooks is out. Zeke has been way less and less involved, so it's Lamb, who's 8,600 cheap whatsoever. But he is the dominant player that just hasn't really had his dominant game yet.
Right.
But if you remember back to week 17 last year, having over 200 yards on 17 targets and a touchdown, if you had him in the fantasy championship, you probably won
Right, exactly.
because of that. And so he's been just one of the best in the NFL, and he just has yet to have his boom. I think this is the week that he does that. Jalen Tolbert, his break game targets in the first game without Brandon Cooks with the game-winning touchdown on 4th down against Pittsburgh. So he is completely viable. The uncomfortable problem is him being next to Jake Ferguson being
Right,
the
I was gonna
exact same
say the same
price,
price is got
but it's different values because it's just this guy's 5,000, this guy's 5,000. Pick one.
right.
One's a tight end, and so being a tight end, being in an uncomfortable position that has not produced well. If you look at Jake Ferguson off a knee injury where
Yeah,
he got banged up week 1, obviously one they were playing from ahead, and then obviously left the game. His first game back, 11 targets, led the team. Oh, so he's not going to be East Beckham.
he's
He's
the
just
guy.
going to be the guy. And then
Yeah,
the following week catches all 7 targets. The following week 6 for 70. He just hasn't scored yet, but he's had no bad game this year. And
I
he's very safe to play. And I know Jalen Tolbert maybe has more upside, but from a value perspective, being a different position is really going to open up a lot if you are able to spend down to a Jake Ferguson. And then there's a couple actually value options in the 4K range from a receiver perspective, and we'll talk about. And then last but not least, Kavonte Turpin.
mhm.
He didn't have enough snaps last week, only 22%, but he had a 27% share of opportunities. So he obviously has 5 targets. He has a rush, but he only played 22 snaps.
Yep.
So being over 25%, if you're getting the ball, or you're a threat to have any kind of upside. Being 38, being a slate that again we talked about, there's not much value on. A little bit more in the 4K range, but from the 3K, there's not really somebody that I'm in love with.
Right, for sure.
He's
Agreed.
somebody, if we're going to do a triple stack in a small slate like this, bless you.
Apologies.
No, you're good. If you're going to do a triple stack, he makes a lot of things work because he's all the way down at 38. So he is in play as well. Rico Dowdle has been getting more and more of the opportunities. Obviously, there was some coach speak that Zeke was frustrated with his role and don't understand. And their response or retort to it is that they're quote unquote saving him. And I don't know if you have to play Hunter Lupke, the fullback,
No.
50% of the snaps to save somebody at the seat. Really, that doesn't mean he's playable whatsoever, but he's done well on some showdown slates for us
Oh yeah,
because
showdown.
he's basically had a couple targets every game. He's the Kyle Hughes check, poor man version. So very self-explanatory for Dallas. And then the bring back perspective, you're going to bring back with Jahmyr Gibbs, you're going to bring back with David Montgomery, or you're going to bring all, if you can afford it,
Amon
up to
Ra,
Amon Ra,
for
who's
sure.
going to be one of the highest projected guys on the entire day.
I was gonna say with this team, I'm really loving the fact that at the end of the 100s, we had a lot of best ball lineups with both Jake Ferguson and Brock Bowers.
Mhm.
Because Jake Ferguson, like you said, hasn't scored. Is today the day? That would be pretty cool because we're gonna play a lot of him. So
Right.
we will hope he scores today. But
And
he's been one of the most consistent tight ends in football.
yeah, and if you look from a raw projection standpoint, both of them
Yeah.
over 12 points projected. The next is Sam Laporta, who's been a very big disappointment, being tied in 1.5 allegedly, depending on the site you redraft or you drafted on. But then all the way down to Kyle Pitts, which
Right.
can't trust. Then it's Freiermuth way below 8 points. So
Yeah.
there's 2 steady options, especially on the early or the afternoon only slate. And Fergie correlating with Dak, I just think is a great way to go.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other stack because I know you said honorable mention. Do you want to bring up Justin Fields at all?
We can.
Real
I
quick.
mean, obviously, they're not home. It's gonna feel like it's at home because of the amount of Steelers fans. I don't know if you saw that story, but one thing to note is that Jalen Warren was doubtful all week.
Yeah.
He didn't practice.
I
and
thought
then,
he was out.
Exactly. We wrote it on our sheet that he was out, and found out last night that, oh no, he's gonna play. That doesn't mean, oh, I can't play Najee. That doesn't mean, oh, you should play Jalen Warren.
Right.
But it's worth noting.
Yeah,
Cordell Patterson obviously still out. But what's
surprised.
interesting with George Pickens, his lack of snaps last week, very kind of frustrating. We spent a lot on showdown of him, but he was third on the team in snaps with under 60%, whereas Calvin Austin north of 75,
Mhm.
Van Jefferson above 80, which he has in every single healthy game essentially that he's played. So the snaps were concerning. but it's still very self-explanatory. Pat Fryermuth has scored each of the last 2 weeks. He's been north of 70% of the snaps. They play a lot of two tight end sets as well. Darnell Washington always hovers around 50%. Calvin Austin, like I just mentioned, over 75% of the snaps. He's 3,300. So
Hmm.
very reasonable, easy to get to if you wanted to go that route. But you haven't really needed to double Justin Fields. But QB1, he was our puke stack a couple weeks ago against Indy. Obviously, he was QB1 on the entire weekend. George Pickens dropped a touchdown. He fumbled basically inside the 5-yard line. He
Right.
still had 20 points. Pat Fryermuth had 16 points. He scored one of the touchdowns. And so if you doubled him, it worked. You did specifically. It is worth noting that. And again, being 5,800 against the Raiders, it's pretty solid if you want to go there. It's not somebody that I'm going to force. We're probably going to only play one line, and if it's two lines, it's probably both Dak lines. That's how
Yeah.
I'm kind of approaching this
Fair
afternoon
enough.
slate.
I just thought I'd bring him up because we should talk about him. He is the best other value on the slate, in my opinion. Let's build a line though.
Let's do it.
I think that we're cutting it close, so I want to do some other slates. But let's check out Dak is going in our line. I want to ask you which way, because we're gonna put CD in the line no matter what. Which way would you like to go from here?
Right now, I want to do Fergie, and then if you'll allow me, since you have the mouse and I have no control over this,
No.
going Cavante Turpin to open up some salary relief as well.
Okay.
Doing a triple stack. It's only a 4-game slate. You can break some rules, and it's viable. You don't have to return much value from 3,800 perspective. Start out like that, and then bring it back. It's easiest to go Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yes.
Obviously, he was our thumbnail on the props because 57 was a smash.
Yes.
It's all the way up above 60 now, so I hope you got in on that early. But he's just easiest to bring back. Again, if it's just price doesn't matter, maybe lean on Monroe, but maybe even not, just because they've been consistent. Dallas is way worse against the run. We talked about how they gave up over 110 yards in both home games this year to Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
So Jahmyr Gibbs has to fight for snaps with David Montgomery, but he's getting more of a goal line workload. Problem is he hasn't had targets each of the last 2 weeks. I don't think that'll be a third straight week where they do that. I think that was just kind of game script and how the game environment just kind of ended up working out. And it's not like because he had that, he only salvaged with the touchdown. He was still very efficient with his touches, which he has been all year. It's just from a PPR perspective, I still want you to get your 4 or 5 targets that I know you can get.
Right, for sure. So we're gonna triple stack Dallas, bring back a Detroit defense. Do you have a specific defense that you had in mind?
Essentially, the way I would approach this, obviously, Carolina, Atlanta's one of the highest point totals. Dallas and Detroit is the highest.
Right.
It's basically, I don't know if Pittsburgh's worth going all the way to 37.
At home, Denver,
but
is interesting.
Really, to me, it's kind of whoever you think is going to win the Chargers Broncos game.
Yeah,
because both defenses have played really well, and they're basically the same price. That's kind of how I would approach it.
Okay.
It's just whoever you think is going to win. I think it's going to be a 20-17,
right,
as
right.
a ceiling kind of game. Anything else is just kind of butter. I think both will hover around 8 points, plus the upside of more turnovers, maybe pick sixes, etc. So that's kind of how I would do defense. You got 5,200 remainder. Got to get a little bit more uncomfortable.
Well,
receiver.
I know exactly where to go at receiver. There's a guy that is going to get all the run at 4,200 and Trey Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
He's literally like both Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers are going to be out today. Jacoby is doubtful. He's going to be out, I believe. So Tucker.
Who else is next up on the chart? Just from an intrigue perspective for the Raiders.
No one worth really mentioning, but
because I know they're going to be $3,000.
Yeah.
So it's like on a slate like this where I know there's 2 more running backs that we really want to get to if we can.
Right.
Obviously, Brock Bowers, we're not going to force a double, but DJ Turner being pretty.
Yeah. Let's see if the snap counts are out. Well, they're out, but let me go pull them because I think that might help us. I don't know that they're going to have any snap counts though.
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby Myers played 97% last week, so you don't really know. But DJ Turner, worth mentioning, 74%. He played over 50 snaps last game.
$33 to $100.
And he had 4 targets and a rush. So 5 opportunities being 3,300. worth a mention.
Yeah.
But I would still get to trade Tucker in that regard. And then obviously, I don't know who's going to take the Jacoby Myers role today. But Tyreek McAllister, haven't heard of
It's
him.
going to be
Alec Bachman.
Brock Bowers.
Yeah, it's going to be Brock Bowers. So maybe it's viable to do a double tight end.
I thought about it.
However, there's just two. And we can talk about it. It's in the same game, but Chuba Hubbard and Bijan are both in great spots. And
yes, they are. Yes.
If we can get to them, obviously in this build we cannot, which is uncomfortable a little bit. But Bijan has just not had his boom game, similar to CeeDee Lamb. He's only scored one time this year, and it was in his most inefficient game. And his snap counts have just been frustrating.
Right.
And he's also been limited with the hamstring injury. So if you kind of want to stay away because of that, completely fine. Just go down to Chuba, who, if you look at his game log, man,
insane.
He's been insane. Outside of week one and two, they were trailing 30 at halftime, essentially in both games.
Yeah,
he still salvaged week 2, having 4 receptions, but each of the last 3 weeks, 31. I think he was RB2 on the week overall. 25 points the following week, and then 18.5 the following week, and it's all over 5 yards a carry. It's all 4 to 5 targets a game. He has the red zone work. He's scored every one of those games. And Atlanta, once again, they're not one of the worst against it, running backs, but again, 70 yards at least to every single running back this year, have a lot of touchdowns to a lot of those guys. Chuba is one of the few guys just that is healthy in that offense, and he's just going to get all the opportunity that he can if it's a close game.
Yep. Dustin just gave us an update. Komet just caught a second touchdown of the game. Bears up 14-3 with 13 seconds left in the first half.
Well, we have a decent amount of best ball shares of Mr. Cole Komet.
And Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So
that'd be fun.
Yeah, they go together, luckily. But yeah, Chuba Hubbard is definitely an option we had to talk about. I think 5,100, do we have anybody that just kind of stands out? Jalen Warren, Tolbert.
I mean,
God,
we get naughty.
Wow, I don't think you could do that.
Also, want to mention Alex Madison. Obviously, Zamir White. He's trending towards not playing. He has a Q tag on him, but being 5,300, he has had some reception side, and off of that, more receivers being out, and Aiden O'Connell now being the guy. That could be an opportunity where he has some sneaky inefficient value, being only 53, but obviously we can't get to him in this build. Algiers, honorable mention if you don't believe in Bijan Robinson, just because Carolina is terrible against running back, and
he has the hamstring too, which is an interesting injury.
What are y'all doing down there? Y'all need to stretch.
Let's see. It's hot out there. Xavier Legette. Lad McConkey's an interesting thought because he's been the number one, 7-6, plenty of targets, scored a couple touchdowns. He's got 15-point upside.
And I don't think he's the guy that Mr. Patrick Surtain.
No, he's a slot receiver. So yeah, exactly. Pat goes in there every once in a while, but not very often.
Shout out to him because he's been killing it.
Stud, yeah.
You're somebody that was in on him early as well, because you've been killing it with your college football scouting coverage in the early stages of this GTD podcast. It's not. I don't really have a confident one. I do also want to mention Ray McLeod being 4,300. To me, on the afternoon slate between him, Cavante, and Trey Tucker, spend on 2 of them is kind of how I would approach it to open up. But spending all 3, one, there's 800 left, and I don't know where we're going to spend the money if we want to go up.
We could go to Bijan.
Double if you want to get off Cavante, because we are indeed triple stacking. You can.
Yeah, let's see. I don't think that. Well,
you can go to like a Josh Palmer who is yet to have his boom game.
Yeah. 43.
Just thinking about it. One thing I do want to mention, and we're not going to play him on DFS, but Kamani Vidal is going to be active today because Gus Edwards went to IR. So our best ball lines have been killing it so far, and he is our gem that has just been waiting for his opportunity.
And I need him to come on. I need him to hurry up.
Yeah.
I was going to say Amir Abdullah is interesting because he is the backup. He is a pass catcher. He has 3 targets last week.
He scored the touchdown.
14. I think he's interesting. I don't love this line right now. So what do you want to do to change it? Tell me what I need to do. Can we take CD out? Is that an option?
No.
Okay.
We're not doing that. Shoot.
Where are we going to? I can go down here.
Yeah, it's honestly
very uncomfortable.
very uncomfortable at
But
this spot.
I'm okay with this line as is, and then just throwing someone in
It's
there
just
that
the last guy,
we're confident
just
it's
trying to
with.
figure out one, whether it's Josh Palmer, who is yet to have his boom game. I believe other than the game that he left due to injury,
Yeah,
he's been getting his fair amount of snaps.
yeah,
I'm
he's
pulling it
in.
up right now.
Quentin Johnston was actually pretty good, but he's 100 too expensive.
I mean, all of them have north 75% the last 2 weeks. Josh Palmer didn't play in week 3. Obviously, they were on a bye last week, but 77% for both Quentin and Ladd, and then 79% for Josh Palmer.
More comfortable with Lad if we just wanted to do that, but and then go
So
down to
down to Cavante.
yeah. I think that's the most comfortable thing,
Okay,
in my opinion.
that's fine with me.
Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to build on this slate because the pricing and there's no value. I mean, we have to go find value. If you think of Devontae Turpin, he might have a touchdown on special teams also.
It's a
but-
great way to get about 7 guys you feel great about, and then the last 2 in are uncomfortable.
Right.
But on slates like this, everybody else is feeling that way as well.
Mhm.
So that means the ownership is going to be pretty spread out.
Oh,
So
I love slates that are hard to build. I love slates that don't have value because at that point, then like you have to actually know what you're doing rather than just plugging in chalk.
right, like Dak, especially on this slate, is probably going to be the most popular quarterback, and obviously everybody that plays Dak is going to play CD.
Right.
And one of the more popular doubles is going to be Jake, but not a lot of people are going to triple stack.
Right.
So we're getting different in that regard. Probably playing one of the more popular defenses. Trey Tucker will eat chalk on that.
Yeah.
Ladd, I don't think he'll have much ownership. I think Chuba will be reasonable,
Mhm.
but it's only because there's really only 3 running backs to spend on. Also wanted to mention Javonte Williams kind of getting more and more of a workload. He's only 5,500, and projections really like him today. He's somebody that we're maybe getting to. Might be on the outside looking in, but he's been a guy that gets a lot of
taking his
efficient-
job back basically.
Yeah, and he just hasn't scored yet. He just keeps getting vultured. So all those stats that he's getting, imagine with the touchdown next to it, then he's all of a sudden a high end RB2.
Right. Also, you should, if you're going to play this slate and play more than one line, prioritize Brock Bowers.
Right.
That's going to be a thing.
You can't just fade him.
Yeah.
And whether that's double stacking or hey, instead of Jay Ferguson, we're going Jalen Tolbert, and then we're going to spin up to Brock Bowers, and then mix and match and stuff like that is a way to go.
Yeah, let me go to the main slate. I have to sneeze again. Oh my gosh.
Allergic to the bullshit, man.
Yeah, I don't know who was in that line that I did not like. I'm gonna hope to get past that. Discussion. I don't know if you can answer it. How do you Min today coming back from injury? That is
I mean, essentially, I think he'll probably be about 70-80% of what you would expect from him. Obviously, he'd be a popular play if he was 100% healthy, being a 6-point favorite on the road, and then also being probably about 15 to 18 touches.
Right.
I just don't know how efficient, but he also is a candidate to probably score a touchdown. He's safe. I'm not spending 6,900 for him on a main slate. I'll tell you that though.
Fair enough. Main slate is interesting. There's some situations that we've talked about to monitor, but going into it, which quarterback would you like to go over? Start with, because I've already talked about all these guys that we're willing to play. They're still the same players. That's not going to change.
Once again, my favorite quarterback on the entire slate is Mr. Dak Prescott.
Of course.
And that's no bias whatsoever because I don't like him from a real life perspective.
I like Dak.
This time, we're going to just double. We're not going to do a triple stack. One, because you won't let me.
I will not.
And two, because you really just don't want to build that way on a main slate when there's 10 games. Normally, there's even more. So,
or the other guy.
Well, that's the question I have for you is if we're doing the 5 lines we've been doing, I want to do at least 2, but maybe even 3 Dak lines. And obviously, we're going to have a CD and Jake double, and we're going to have a CD and pick your other favorite.
I was actually going to ask you if you wanted to do a non-CD Tolbert Jake double.
Non-CD, no. I'm not gonna.
You can't do that.
I can't sign up for it. We can pretend.
Okay,
but it's not something.
I want to pretend. Okay. I do want to pretend later. But yeah. So Detroit. We're gonna go straight to Jahmyr Gibbs. Are we gonna talk about this guy because he's been pretty damn good, and he's getting the receiving.
Last year, he's averaged 18. Apparently, he's a pass catcher now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at his last 3 games. I don't know what his receiving line was for Arizona, but he probably hit the over on all 3 of them. He has not had a game below 15 fantasy points. He's been incredible this year. The only thing is some of those games, um, obviously 11, 12 attempts, and he salvages with one scoring a touchdown because he scored in every single game this year, and also 4 for 35 receiving, which never really happens with him. And then
Right.
his one catch last week or 2 weeks ago, rather, went for 40 yards. So a lot of, kind of baked in weirdness happening with him, but he's still really good in a good spot. And if he's the one that just vultures touchdowns from Demir, like, I'm going to be upset. But, if you want to go him, that's fine. I just think the upside, if who's going to score 30, if you
Oh, it's
X
Jameer
Detroit
Gibbs.
scores 30 points, what? It's probably Jameer Gibbs. So that's
Yeah,
why.
for sure. I just want to say like he needs to be talked about. We need to possibly say if we're 500 over, okay, go from Jameer Gibbs down to David
If we
Montgomery.
got to make him fit, we can make him fit.
I think he makes it okay. Let's go get a defense. Which defense would you like to start with? Is there one that
I'd probably start with the Patriots,
Okay,
just to
start there?
similar to Jameer, but in the opposite way. If we
Yeah,
have
right.
extra, like we did in the early only say, and we got up to Tennessee, I'm fine with that. But spending on the cheapest defense in a decent spot, I think, is a fine way to go.
What game would you like to target next?
I don't know.
Would you like to go with the second highest total in Baltimore and the Commanders? Would you like to go to the
We're
Falcons
gonna have
Panthers?
no money if we do.
Fair. Falcons Panthers. What running back maybe? There's some cheap ones. There's some cheap
There is
ones.
some cheap ones on this slate. Now that we have everybody in there,
That one,
if we
which I like. I also think Austin Eckler against Baltimore is interesting. You can come down even farther to 5,300 and play Alexander Madison, Antonio Gibson. There's a few options here. Are you comfortable with anything?
No, I'm not. But
Okay.
it's not like I don't want to play any of them. It's I don't know. There's one that's going to score the 20-point game, and I just don't have confidence in
Which
who
one?
that will be.
I think I'm gonna side with Bucky.
Bucky, all right,
because of his uptick in, and also I think he's the pass catcher. I think he becomes Rashad White's role faster, and that annoying role where because Bucky's just as inefficient as Rashad White. He's just the backup. So when he comes in, it's a change of pace, kind of like how Tony Pollard and Zeke were. And then Tony Pollard sucked when Zeke left because he didn't have that change of pace ability.
Right.
It's going to be the same thing with Bucky, in my opinion, but not in week one. Not the first week he plays,
Yeah.
So
I mean, every single game he's been very efficient, except for week 2. And that again was the best defense against running backs. So neither of them were, and he was the more efficient in that game.
I'm projecting Bucky Irving to be inefficient if Rashad White's not on the team.
Okay.
But that's just because I thought that when he came out, this last year. So
right. So all right. So we only have about 4,900. So we're gonna have to get cheap. Obviously, Trey Tucker is the first name that comes to mind in terms of cheap players. And then that opens up a little bit of salary relief.
A little bit. Playing heavy Dak is tough this week. Let me go grab you RotoWire values because they might be able to help us. I do. Let's see. All classic. I think we're going to catch some.
So the highest value on the entire slate is
Bucky's on
Chuba Hubbard. Bucky is actually third. So we're fine doing that. And then Trey Tucker is second. So, and then I see some Jake Ferguson in there. And obviously, I'm surprised that projections actually have Amon-Ra over CeeDee Lamb. That's very interesting to me because I don't think that it's an elite matchup for Amon-Ra like it is for CD.
Right.
So, but
I also really like this week because all the roster percents are less than 27% overall.
Yeah, there's finally no chalky guy. It
makes
was
me
frustrating
happy.
for almost a month essentially that Jordan Mason just was underpriced, and even last week being 7,400, he was still over 30% owned.
Right.
And you don't really see many players unless there's just like a last minute injury go north of 30, and he was that every single week. So I'm glad to have a little bit more spread out ownership today.
For sure. I think this is the guy I want to talk about is Jalen Polk. 3,600. We talked about him earlier. Correlates a little bit with the defense. And he leaves us 7,100, which gives you a pretty great set of options. I like Jaden Reed. I like Josh Jacobs if we want to go with that Green Bay game. or we can go up here and go to like Tennessee and get Tony Pollard. We can go, in a lot of different directions now. So,
or even Bijan. We didn't put him in our afternoon only, but we really like him today as well. But it is a little bit more risky just because he's obviously nursing hamstring.
yeah, let's see what they said.
And his
Fully
frustrating
practice.
usage. But he had a full practice on Friday. I think they're just kind of monitoring it. But
Right,
you
for
always
sure.
know that there's re-risk with hammies. They're not one to mess with.
Yep, one of the worst things. Zach Pratt, we love game time discussions. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Let's go. Tell your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the way up in Dallas area.
For sure. So where do you want to go?
I don't know.
Do you want to change
And then
anything?
another option is if you wanted to tag double mint here, getting off of Trey Tucker because he's somewhat popular, or getting off of Bucky to do 6,000 running backs is a thing as well.
I'd love to get to Chuba Hubbard.
So then put back in Trey. I want to see the average of what we can afford.
Yeah, let's see. Trey, there's my guy. Only living Raider.
Damn. So putting Chuba in, obviously he's in a great spot. We like him. He's going to be a popular running back.
I mean, I have an idea.
So go ahead and put in Chuba.
I think Chuba and Tony Pollard is interesting.
Okay. So 62. That's
JK. Wow,
JK without Gus Edwards. So again, we think LA is going to win.
Yeah.
As well.
He had his big weeks. It's possible. He just also sucked in the last two.
Yes.
So, but he played Pittsburgh, KC. Like, it's not like
those are elite defenses.
Yeah. Not the same versus Denver. What about Tony? Obviously, is an option. Like I said, you could also go to Brock, which would be interesting. We did put Trey Tucker back in. We do have two really, really cheap guys. If I took one of them out, you get like no money though. So it's not like that actually helps us that much.
Go back to
not Chuba.
I don't know. Because I do like Bucky, and I want to play him a couple of lines. I want to definitely be overweight to him. Once again, want to mention Calvin Ridley. I like his spot today, but it's not like he's somebody I'm forcing in. Get 800. That's not enough for Chargers. But it is enough for Tennessee. If you want to go that route,
is it help us Trey Tucker?
You can
5,000.
If you hypothetically like Demario Douglas more than Jalen Polk, you can afford him.
Oh yeah, that's true. That I'm not against that. I don't think
him being 100% snap share.
I'd rather get Jalen Polk personally, but I don't hate it for people that want to play it because we love Demario Douglas. I'd rather play Tony Pollard.
Then let's put Tony Pollard in.
Yeah, I think I'd rather play Tony Pollard because he just has the opportunities. He's playing Indy, and screw Indy. They don't want to suck on defense right now. But yeah, so this is what I would think for a good first look.
Build.
We're gonna play another build with. Hold on, let me just do it this way because we're gonna do this again probably. It's right there.
Okay.
Or do you want to switch this to Mr. Well, no, not tight end.
One thing that'll help, because like receiver, especially in the mid range, is really uncomfortable this week. Go with Tolbert.
Yeah.
And then go cheap tight end.
Okay.
And see what we can work with. Obviously, we like Cade Otton.
Yeah,
we like Juwan Johnson.
I'm on Cade Otton.
We can make that work. So this time, no Bucky.
Right.
I'm not playing two. But let's see what we can afford.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Apologies.
Go all the way down to the New England Patriots, not the Panthers.
Not the Panthers. Don't pick the Panthers, guys.
Shoot. All right. So obviously, my preferred bring back is still Jameer.
Okay.
I don't know how we can get to Amon-Ra. I just really don't.
So expensive. And how are you gonna get CD and Amon-Ra at the wide receiver spot and not have any running backs because you're not going to be able to pay up for any of them.
There's a lot of good 6K running backs this week.
Yeah.
So honorable mention, but Jahmyr Gibbs being 7,000, like it's in that bracket, and he's elite spot as well. So
right. Okay. So talking about the next game, do we want a New Orleans player? I mean, you could go with if you go to wide receiver, Chris Olave is an option.
Try him and see what we can do.
He's a little expensive, but we could also 51. Just put Trey Tucker in and then get up to 6,000, which is again
Tony Pollard.
Tony Pollard. Let's not do that.
I would really prefer if go ahead and take him out, because honestly, I do like Tony Pollard, but for 300 more, if we're deciding between Chuba and Tony, I
I'm
don't
going
think
to
it's a
Chuba.
discussion.
Exactly. Completely agree with that. Chuba is also the highest rostered player on the whole slate, which doesn't mean that much because it's only 26%. So not going to hurt us or
Probably
help us
be north
either
of
way.
30 if you're doing a cash contest, but
okay, so let's throw Chuba in there so that he's just, we don't even have to
chilling.
question it.
Looking all spiffy.
Where are you? There you are. Okay. And then two more guys, 52, 50. If we went 4,200, we'd still have 6,000 plus. We could
if you wanted
still go Tony.
Yeah.
We
if
could
you
go
wanted to
Brock.
go down to Polk again, that opens up a bring back in Bijan. It opens up a bring back in Chris Olave. If you had to decide, because they're the same price, between Chris Olave and Bijan, who would you be going with?
Bijan.
I
think. Yeah, I
mean,
think so.
Honestly, I'm unfortunately probably not going to get it as much as I would like to of him today. So if we're going to do 5 lines, he might only be in one. We're still probably going to be overweight to the field. Let me see what his projection is.
22.7.
Oh, so that's going to be underweight, actually.
So we might just say 0. Stay with 0 if that's the case. But yeah, I mean, that's a cool bring back. You get both running backs in that game against Atlanta and Carolina. You get the Dallas double with Jameer. Kate Otten is one of our top tight ends this week. Pay down to New England. They will do well. That is our, that's who we're going to, because we have had rough times on the defensive side of the ball this year and picking our defensive special teams, but it's also, we've had some really good ones. So it just has to, the times have changed in New England, and paying down is the option.
I mean, if we're talking the highest owned defenses, it's Tampa Bay against New Orleans. I understand why.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't like that at all, especially if they're the most popular. And then Philly being a 9.5 point favorite against Cleveland. But Philly has been awful on defense this year so far. So them being 14% owned and having to spend up to 34 when you know that Denver and Chargers are chilling in a 13-10 game right below them. I'm not going to go there either. So basically every single defense we're going to target today is less than 9% owned. So that's fun to think about, at least.
You ready to puke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's puke.
Speaking of why we hate Tampa Bay, I'm just
yeah, because they're gonna get shredded by Mr. Spencer Rattler.
Joe Milton. No, I'm just kidding. All right, yeah, Spencer Rattler. So, do you want to start with the uncomfortable line that you?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm gonna let you.
I'm excited
on this one.
All right. So what we're gonna do is we're going to play Spencer Rattler unstacked.
Okay.
Which is just so scary. Which has worked though. Clayton Tune rushing touchdown. Yep. That did not help anybody else but Clayton Tune.
But again, if say Spencer Rattler has 12, 13 points, doesn't score any touchdowns, and basically spreads the ball out, nobody is going to work out if you spend up to 66 for Chris Olave or do I think he's a chalky, or is he not? Shaheed. He is actually only 6% owned.
Wow.
That's actually surprising to me.
Okay. I feel like
Chris Olave is all the way down at 5%. So
12%ish.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that both would be chalkier and just nobody would want to stack, but apparently just nobody wants to play New Orleans today against a defense that just allowed 500 passing yards. But so Spencer is apparently a top 5 owned quarterback, and just all of his options are under 10%. Is interesting. So
I'm gonna shout out this guy Josh Sass for talking shit about Dallas. I appreciate you because I also like talking shit about Dallas. Cam also enjoys talking shit about Dallas.
No, I actually do.
So it's Cam is a Dallas fan. He is not one that is just very emotional and thinks that their team is amazing every year. He believes in them screwing up, and they have done that a lot this year. Their one signee from free agency is actually out with Eric Hendricks. So there you go.
Zeke is still active.
Oh, my bad. I forgot.
Calm down.
Yeah, he's behind Hunter Lupke.
Yeah, he is.
So, that's pretty.
I'm not emotional, but I will be rooting for them playing from behind today and salvaging like
Dak
did.
Give me all the points. But yeah,
in this build, I don't give a damn. Other than if we do see
CD's an option.
Okay,
CD is an option. I just wanted to say I'm going to put the cheapest quarterback and the cheapest defense in. and we're just gonna have
What do you want?
money, money
Okay,
forever.
so a fun way to do a skinny with the Dallas and Detroit game, because we're just like we don't know how, is doing a CD and a Monroe if we can do that. I don't know if that's the route you wanted to go on this build,
It
but
wasn't,
if you're going
but
to, the easiest way to do that is just cheapest quarterback, cheapest defense, and
oh yeah,
even if you want to do a cheap tight end, and then you're just like just whoever you want, just
I literally
click
still
those
have
guys.
$5,300 and I haven't put a tight end yet. If I wanted to do this, I did want to bring Jameer Gibbs into this, and I know we've played him 3 times, but there's a reason he's the thumbnail.
Right.
Like he's the thumbnail for a reason, right? So let's just put him in there. We'll get his 20 points every week, like we do, and for his $7,000, and we'll just go on to our next. I think that at tight end, okay, I
Yeah,
want
what do
to
you want to
play
do at tight
Brock
end, though?
Bowers.
Okay,
Okay,
that's fine.
I think it's
I don't want to be 0% owned, so this is the easiest way to do that, and you still got 5,500 to
yeah.
do whatever. We're just not playing Trey Tucker.
No. I do want the bring back for Tampa Bay also. I was gonna ask you if you'd rather play Kate Otten or Brock Bowers, or if you would just put our running back in there and Bucky.
Well, it depends on if you just wanted to get more expensive receivers, or if you wanted to just try to get value receivers to try to get more expensive running backs. What route were you going in this build? Because if you go all the way down at tight end, you could do both. But if you're staying here, then you kind of got to decide: are we doing cheap running backs or are we doing cheap receivers?
We're playing Brock Bowers today. I just
No,
don't
I
know
know.
how.
I'm just saying in this build, per se.
So look at this. Like I still have
6,100.
61. I'm gonna put if I do this, I'm gonna go grab Chuba.
Yep.
Because yes, 2 wide receivers, a flex for 6,000. I can basically
Oh, I
do
know what to
anything.
do.
Go ahead, tell me.
Go down to. We kind of talked him into existence, but Jalen Polk at
Oh my
36.
goodness.
I'm
Okay.
not saying this build, but I'm just saying like I'm really starting to like get
Yeah.
on the
I hope
get on the
so.
saddle.
Yeah. 7,300. Let's see.
7,300, man.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's probably too much money.
What do you need? What do you want?
I want to win $1 million is what I need. But if you went up to a Monraw, that's still 6,500. That's enough for Zay Flowers. That's enough for almost enough for Bijan. Slash Chris Olave.
I would take if I went up to a Monroe, I wouldn't play both Detroit.
Oh, true. That's fine. Put Gibbs back. Unless you don't want to.
Want to try it?
No, real quick. Put in Bijan as the last week the $1 million line had the correlated running back between Carolina
Right,
and
exactly.
DeAndre Swift. So let's go 2 for 2 with that, and then
Josh Jacobs?
yeah, there, and then obviously we can go wherever we want to, whether it's Josh Jacobs, Chris Olave as a bring back to K Dotton. Yeah, this is
then
fun.
we would stack him at that point. But that was and
So
that's
even better.
That's a point against my my philosophy.
Okay.
No,
then that's fine. Then
but
let's
yeah,
go Josh Jacobs.
if you
We'll
wanted to
do
put Chris
three
Olave.
running backs that have elite upside, and K Dotton, who actually I'm surprised how popular he is in terms of being the 4th highest owned projected tight end.
Right.
Everybody below Jake Ferguson is below 8%, so it's very spread out. So that's not really saying much, but it is interesting to say the least.
All right, let's go back to where we were.
Okay.
I want to put Brock in at tight end.
That's fine.
It's $2,500 difference. That's a lot. But at the same time, we didn't actually. Funny enough, in that last line, we didn't put Trey Tucker back in, which we more than could have. I'm sure.
Right.
But yeah, looking at this line now, we have Brock. Do we want a Pittsburgh guy? I'm not against George Pickens. Wish his snap counts were more consistent, but
I mean, he's not going to be owned at all today. Like, let me pull him up. He's 10%. Okay.
Wow, that's more than I was hoping for.
I'm not going to force him in. I've kind of fallen out of love with him this week. I'd rather spin down to Calvin Ridley, who is
probably like 4%.
He's not even on this damn sheet.
4%.
4.9.
Okay.
So
5. Okay.
Very cheap. Or not cheap, but low owned.
Okay.
He's not popping in projections. Vegas doesn't love him. Fun tournament play. On top of that, we really haven't played anybody in the Tennessee game, and that was one of our contrarian games.
Was one of our contrarian games. Well, we've been playing Tony Pollard.
True.
I do want to know if you think we still need to force Chuba in.
Well, here's my thing. If we play 5 lines, right, and you're a math major, so I know it's easy to know this answer with your exposure to him. If we know that he's the highest owned and he's going to get north of 30,
Yes.
trending to that. 40 is barely overweight, but I would just let's call that even. How many lines of Chuba would you like to play out of 5?
Minimum 3.
Okay.
Where are you at? Are you at
I'm
0?
fine with that.
Oh,
No,
okay,
no,
okay,
no,
okay.
no.
I was
I'm not
about to
at
say,
0.
like,
I'm not at
are
0.
you doing that? We
I'll
should
tell
have
you
done
that
that with
much.
Jordan Mason. That's all I'm saying.
We should have.
I did say it,
But
I didn't mean it, but I said
said
it.
I said I wanted to be overweight
Right,
or
right.
underweight, and you were like, "Let's just say 0," and I was like, "Whoa, slow down." But he also, just doesn't
Nah.
score.
Yeah.
It's whatever.
Okay, so we'll be right here. So we have Bucky
55.
because I had to put him as the bring back.
That's fine.
55. If I put $6,300 Mr. Chuba in, which I think is viable. Where are you? Oh, up. Wow. Okay, and then I have 2 wide receiver spots for 5,100. I can go to. Oh, God damn! I'm gonna put Jalen Polk again. I'm gonna lose my mind.
We're gonna have way too much Jalen Polk today, guys, and it's gonna be
and
scary
it
fun.
only has to work one time. Oh, look at that, $6,600. Oh my God!
Oh wow,
Chris Olave. I hate
Well,
this thing.
I mean,
I'd like
but
to
here's the problem
play.
though. If you went up to like a Ray McLeod, because obviously we're not going to trade Tucker in this build.
I have an
It's
idea.
okay. Go ahead.
I'm gonna play the Washington Baltimore game that we haven't played yet,
Okay.
and we're gonna play both of them.
Let's see. Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna do because I
Okay.
don't want Chris Olave. But obviously, if you wanted to play Chris Olave, you are more than welcome to. I'm just doing this because I'm trying to get on the Spencer Rattler.
If we have
no stack
Spencer Rattler build, we're only going to do probably one that has an unstacked
right, exactly.
But yeah, it was funny how it just kept on like, hey, you sure? You sure you don't want to pay me?
Well, so in this build too, if you look, we get the Brock Bowers.
Wow.
He's going to be the main receiver for the Raiders at home. He hopefully will score a couple touchdowns and the Raiders will win, and I'll be happy.
Well, good news is the Bears are exactly what we thought they were. The bad news is we suck at picking London games because they're now up 21-3.
We seem to do that.
And but at the same time, the Jets almost came back and won last week. If it weren't for Aaron Rodgers sucking, and then
that was a horrible,
terrible interception.
Caleb Williams, 17 of 21 for 172, 3 touchdowns and an interception. It's pretty dang good. Good.
I honestly almost brought him up. He had a touchdown 1.5 prop as a pepper. And I was like, that's very interesting early in the week. And then it got to even. I was like, okay, the fun is over.
Well, I just want to let you know that Travis Etienne has decided that he just doesn't play football anymore.
No.
He's got three rushes for -1 yards and no catches.
Oh, you're going to beat me.
I'm going to beat you.
Oh.
He is Travis Etienne. I'm excited now.
I had to play him.
I get it.
Apparently, Roshan Johnson is the guy instead of, and he only has 4 points. But that's way better than -0.1. So
Roshan has 3 catches for 22 yards. He must have a fumble. Nope, I don't know. But yeah, so looking at this line, I think it makes a lot of sense. Where would you like to go next? What other lines would you like to build? I mean, this is obviously where we're going to go. We're either going to go Dak, Lamar, maybe Lamar.
How about we try real quick to do a Spencer Rattler stack, single stack?
You're asking too much of me.
No, I'm not.
I'm just kidding. I'm so kidding. Wait, which one? Which guy? Because it keeps working out with Chris Olave.
Yeah, it has to be Chris Olave.
We're gonna just build the line we just made with him instead.
Yeah. Because honestly, we're gonna be like, if we're playing 5 lines, we're playing 2 Spencer Rattler lines, and it's gonna be fun because he's only like 7%.
Yeah. What's his? I was gonna ask.
He's one of the 5 most popular quarterbacks. Yet nobody is over 10% as a receiver. And even Alvin Kamara being 16%, that's not even in the top 5 among running backs. So really just, hey, play Spencer Rattler, but don't play him with anybody. And that's...
Why is Jalen Hurts the second highest owned quarterback on this?
I don't know.
And also, don't forget, Jalen Hurts has got a star next to his name because normally that means value, and he has like the 10th value. I don't really understand what's happening.
Yeah, I don't get it. But also Dak being only 11%. Like, if you're going to keep him under 20, like, sign me up because we're going to have a lot of Dak today.
We're gonna have probably 3 lines of Dak and then 2 lines of Spencer Rattler. Scary.
Yeah.
Are we playing a Lamar line? That's a real question.
Well, here's the problem. If we play Lamar with 1 line, we're gonna be underweight.
Yeah.
So Is that a thing?
No, I told
Or
you
is-
earlier we were gonna fade. That's why we
Okay,
were gonna
then
fade Jordan Mason.
fuck Lamar Jackson. Or
Wow.
no, yeah. Who is Lamar Jackson?
We'll play him on early only.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be our exposure.
Yeah, I'll feel better about that. Here we are. Ta-da.
Welcome back. Well, at the same time, I don't know if I want to, because you've talked me into Bucky Irving. So
Okay.
doing Kate Otten, I know I like you, but
I do enjoy Kate Otten. He's probably got the best value on the whole slate for tight end.
yeah, I think right now in terms of value, it
should be
is
nobody.
Jake Ferguson, Dalton Schultz. We haven't mentioned, but again, without Nico at 4,100, reasonable if you want to put him in as the last man.
Mhm.
And then Kate Otten is third with 7.63, which I will take every day at only $3,500.
And Brock is at 2.08, which is low. I'm just letting you know now. It's low.
Let's go.
Gardner, sorry, not Gardner. Aiden O'Connell is going to be throwing Brock the ball. Yeah, there we go.
That's what's gonna happen.
Tough. He actually looks really good recently, so I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to hate him as much.
If he's your quarterback, I'm going to say this all off season. If he's your quarterback, you will not have a fun outlook on life.
No, I agree, but he might have to be QB 1, 2, or 3 because there just aren't any others. So, yeah, but let's talk about this. Where do you want to go next? Now that we have our main stack.
Well, I don't think there's a single line I want to play today without Dallas and Detroit.
Is that the Dallas guy, or do you want Jake Ferguson?
Do you want 100% of CD?
I mean, I have 80%. So
I mean, that's way overweight.
Yeah, we can play with Jake because we haven't played him on main yet.
There's not one elite receiver other than him that I'm just like, he is going to have the boom game, and I don't want to get away from it.
So the real question is, are you going to want like 80% CD, 60% Jake? Because that's kind of what's going to happen naturally.
Sounds excellent.
Okay, cool. Well, then we'll do it.
Okay, fine.
Now looking at this, we have Detroit and Dallas.
I hate it.
What do you want from Detroit?
Let's do Amon-Ra.
Okay.
Because technically we're saving
CD?
500 from not playing CD, and then obviously instead of going up to 7,000 for Jameer, we can put Chuba.
Yep.
In. Oh, I know what we're doing.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it. All right, go ahead.
Actually, that's not even close to what we're doing.
Yeah, that's
well. Actually, if you want to double, we can. Do you want to double?
No.
Oh well, there goes my fun.
I thought you were gonna say something else, but okay, go on.
Well, I was gonna say go and Bijan and then Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
At 56, but you have the mouse, so I guess
we could do it, but it's just very uncomfortable.
Then put Zay Flowers in.
Okay. I like Zay.
And then put in Calvin Ridley. Put in Calvin Ridley right now.
Okay.
Put him in
because we haven't played him.
Yes.
So Trey McBride. No.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley. There you go. I feel better.
Do you?
No, I don't.
Look at all these home games.
Home games.
Home,
yes.
home.
Only 2 are on the road, and they're both correlated.
Yeah,
so.
that's why.
Good,
perfect.
Good.
Beautiful. That's wow. We followed the rules, even with a Spencer Rattler build. Who's our out of? Let's see. Oh, we don't have a Washington player, and we don't have an Indy player. So those are the 2 that are weird.
That's fine. I hate the Indy players today based on their values.
I'm gonna say something.
Oh, you want to go to Austin Eckler?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, if you're going to correlate it, Austin Eckler can be put in the line, and then all of a sudden you have Baltimore, Washington, Detroit, Dallas, and then Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Carolina is your out, but hey, Carolina, you have the best point per dollar player and the chalkiest player on the slate. So
exactly,
take it.
So, yeah, that's a very, very good build.
Yeah, all these have been pretty solid.
Good build. I like today.
Today's a fun day. Would you like to tell me the injury report, please?
I really don't.
Is there anything good?
Honestly,
it's probably not much.
The only things we're waiting on is Joe Mixon officially to be ruled in, but he's training to be in, and then doubtful. Somebody was doubtful, and we were like, he's not going to play. It is
to refresh. See if I catch anything on my refresh.
Go to X.
Yeah, it's faster. Let's see. Out.
Somebody was doubtful earlier.
Jacoby.
Jacoby Myers was doubtful, but I think that was somebody else that we were talking about.
Doubtful.
Rashad White.
Also.
Because we were talking about Bucky Irving. That's why.
Doubtful. Still hasn't
Still
been.
no official word. Travis Etienne is questionable return. Yay. Yay.
Let's see.
Fun.
Do you want me to pull up our Yahoo?
I told
I'm
y'all.
gonna pull up our Yahoo League and show you who's winning right now currently.
No, don't do that. I don't want you to do
I
that.
have the mouse.
Hey, Evan Ingram, first game back since his hamstring injury, 7 for 86.
Yeah, Gary didn't play him because he forgot it was a 8:30 game. Good job, Gary. Proud of you.
Tisk tisk.
Um,
Jacksonville just scored to make it reasonable.
Okay.
So,
21-10.
yeah, Trevor's actually having a good statistical game.
Dustin-
Obviously, we haven't tuned in, so we don't know how
It's looked. Yeah.
it's looked. But
He's got a 116 rating, which is solid.
Mhm.
Caleb Williams has a 120.5. I don't know what the QBR is though.
What'd you say?
QBR.
QBR. I don't know what the QBR is, but
I think it
passer
comes
rating
out
is
after.
120.
Yeah, I think QBR comes out
QBR
after.
is more relevant, and people are keeping passer rating around like it matters more, and I don't get it.
Nope.
It should be normalized because there's so many mobile quarterbacks, and there's not every pick is the same. Not every
right. It bounces off someone's hands and lands in someone else's.
Like Patrick Mahomes against Juju last week, and then Kalen Saunders is just turning on the Jets. That was a fun play.
That was crazy. Do you have any other builds you want to talk about?
Let's see. If you wanted to for intrigue, we could try to do a Lamar build. But it's going to be hard to get to him. I just don't like being underweight, even though I'm playing one line and I don't want to play 2 lines with him.
Right, exactly.
But we can just for shits and giggles, we can obviously do the single and then the bring back. Do you want to do Terry or do you want to do Austin?
Terry.
Okay, that's fine. So running back wise, yeah, we're going all the way. We have to on this one.
Yeah, because it's so expensive. Running backs.
Running back. Oh, it's gonna be tough to get cheap. So let's go with Chuba again.
Okay.
Just because why not? And then we're gonna have to go cheap tight end also.
Yep. Let's go grab him. It's gonna be Cade or Juwan.
We haven't talked about him yet, but he's a guy if we are going to do a double, and I don't know if we'll end up doing that, but he's just really easy to just put in at 3,100.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings. He makes the Spencer Rattler double make sense. Juwan Johnson. Sorry, wrong team, wrong.
Hey, but if he does what Juwan Jennings did the other day, or a couple weeks ago,
I'm speaking it into existence.
Imagine.
5,700 remaining for 3 players. Seems pretty good, actually.
I mean, yeah, honestly,
wide receiver.
We're gonna go value receiver.
Trey Tucker. I'm not playing Jalen Polk.
Not again.
Not again. Can't do it.
Okay, so
running back. Let's see. We could go all the way up to like.
We have no Cowboys Detroit game, just for the record.
I know.
Okay.
I see that.
That was intentional.
No.
Oh.
It's just how it's rolling out. You said Chuba. I said cheap.
Okay.
Receiver.
Here's the deal. I'm just kidding.
You could go Kamara here. Or we could just go Gibbs and go 59. I guess we could go up here to
either
the
that
Chargers.
or we can go back to Jake Ferguson, and then we have 44 left over.
Okay. Why don't I go Chargers, Jalen Tolbert?
That's fine.
With that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Chargers today. We haven't really played enough of him. But defenses are also pretty spread out. So basically, if you play 5 lines like we are going to play today, and you just play one defense, you're going to be overweight because there's not a single defense that's above 20% ownership. And the chalkiest one is somebody that we're not even considering in the Bucks. And then right behind them, Philly, who we're not going to.
I'm not considering the Bucks. It's just not going to make my lines very happy.
Yeah. But them being 2,600, being, favorites, you don't really see that often. So
right. And they're playing a backup quarterback. Yeah.
That's kind of what I mentioned last week with Houston. We ended up not playing them, but they were 2,600 at home. We're flipped to the favorite against Buffalo. And I was like, they'll be fine. Like, it'll be reasonable. And it was a lower scoring game. And I think they ended up with like 6 or 7. And I'll take it at 20.
It was fun. Yeah. And it was fun. So yeah, I think this line makes sense. It correlates. It's got Detroit. It's got Dallas. It's got Washington, Baltimore. It's the highest scoring games.
Inactive lists are officially out.
Beautiful. Let's refresh.
Let's see if there's anything sticking out. Joe Flacco to start.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that changes everything. Can't play Tennessee's defense.
Well, that things because
Wow.
like I'm more comfortable bringing back people now. If I'm playing anything Tennessee related,
That's true.
6,000 I'm not spending up for Joe Flacco.
No.
However, you know that again with the receivers in tow, it just makes you feel better about all of them.
What is the receiver? Did Josh
I'm looking.
Downs? Yeah, I was gonna say the receivers are also
Yeah. So that
options.
was actually a big surprise. We weren't expecting that.
Well, that's
Let's see.
expected.
Despite being banged up, blah blah blah. Yeah, Downs is playing, Pittman's playing,
Okay.
but I would not play Pittman with the back injury.
No.
But Josh Downs with a toe injury. I know he missed the first 2 days. I don't really. He had 12 targets, led the team last week, back-to-back weeks. He has 21 targets through 2 games with Joe Flacco, and him being 5,500.
Definitely a guy.
He's in play now.
Alec Pierce didn't have anything talked about. So if you game log watch, you're like, wow, look at that, 134 yards. Yeah. He didn't have anything till the 6 minutes left in the game.
Yes.
So
not a single target, let alone catch. Rashad White officially inactive. We have some Bucky today, so that's a good thing.
I got flex. That's easier.
Let's see.
Joe Mixon. Do you have any news?
Joe Mixon is officially
doubtful.
No. Still nothing official yet.
Okay.
Just still expected to play.
Okay.
We're waiting on it, but we're still not going to play him, even if he does.
Is Deontay Johnson questionable but likely to play?
I think
he's fine. Yeah. Rashad White is out. Josh Downs. Jacoby
Myers. I don't think we'll get news before lock because they're a 3:00 game. But I'll look for shits and giggles.
Zamir White is still questionable. I'm guessing he's going to be out. That's what we had kind of thought this whole time. But
yeah, Ian Rappaport said yesterday regarding Zamir White, he's a long shot to play. And then they actually downgraded Jacoby Myers. It wasn't he was not practicing all week. He actually later in the week started not practicing and was more limited. So
yeah, I got that notification because he is on my bench, and I
really wish you would have started him.
Nope.
No, okay.
I wish I would have started Keenan.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't.
He has a touchdown and 3 receptions.
Damn it, man! I really cannot afford to be 2-4. I'm not. One of us is going to be 2-4 because we just had some bad beats and
we've had some injury issues too. Isaiah Pacheco is
you've had the injuries and I've had the highest point scored against, and last week had 180 dropped on me. It was
that was fun.
It was over very, very early in the day. I'll say that much.
Do you have any news? Christian Watson will be playing, I believe.
Yeah, he was expected to play. It was funny. One of the doctors that we follow that is not well loved. Yeah.
Audric's activated.
Audric's activated. So he and Kamani, if they're some kind of diamonds in the rough and can give us a month worth of elite play, that's going to be very, very when that happens.
Tyler Batty's on IR, so we just take one off, put one on. Ours is the one that's going in, luckily.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, if there's nothing else though,
pretty much everything that we expected, other than obviously we didn't expect Joe Flacco to be starting today.
Right.
But that is a pretty solid precautionary thing to do. Officially active Joe Mixon, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Christian Watson. Non-fantasy perspective, Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley, Antoine Winfield is back this week. Kalijah Cansey and Denzel Ward are officially in. Again, not many people out that we didn't expect other than Anthony Richardson not playing.
Right. But yeah, if y'all have any questions though, ask them now because we will be getting out of here in the next couple minutes. We really appreciate y'all hanging out with us. If you haven't hit the like button, please go do that. We have 5 people in here watching right now. We had probably 15 at one point, so that's good. Been a pretty good week, and I'm excited to play some puke. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Did you want to take a look at the showdown or
we can run
prime time at all
if you want to? While everybody thinks of their questions.
Prime time is actually going to be really fun this week now that we kind of have more clarity on injuries. Obviously, we were waiting on Devin Singletary, whether or not he was coming back, and then obviously the small that is kind of clarified now. There's not really anything we're waiting on. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, we can start with the showdown.
Not that one. Be this one.
Go from there. Yeah.
Let's see. All right. Yeah. I know that there's, numbers out. Devin Singletary's out, so Tyron Tracy is definitely an option. He is basically though the same price. Yeah, 74. Did you have anywhere that you really liked starting? Because I know you
So
looked at
kind
this
of really
early.
the start of this is just Jamar
Jamar and Joe.
being the only guy to spend up on. He's captain viable. Obviously, he's killed each of the last couple of weeks. He has 5 touchdowns in 3 games. Um, since being upset, and Joe Burrow has, even though they're 1-4, he has been excellent this year. Outside of week 1, where obviously Jamar was limited and T Higgins did not play, he didn't play great in that game. But other than that, he's been kind of lights out.
Right.
I just think 10,000 is pretty reasonable to go. And then also wanted to mention, shout out Daniel Jones, my first of my streak of pukey stacks that I mentioned. He's been really, really solid. A couple of games, not fantasy relevant, but for price, being over
Yeah,
18,
for
3 of the
price
last
for
4
sure.
is pretty solid. He has rushing upside. Cincinnati's been bad against quarterbacks so far this year. So he's in play. And then obviously we know where the ball's going because excuse me, Malik Neighbors was getting peppered with targets, and so was Wandell. And then last week when Malik Neighbors was out, who stepped in? Darius Slayton. I'm frustrated that we didn't play him enough because we did shout him out on the live stream. Was in the $1 million line at 3,800, I believe. He had over 120 yards and a touchdown. He's 6,600. I think he's my favorite in preference. If we did do a 5-1 build, you're bringing up only 6,600.
I think I'm comfortable 4-2.
Yeah,
I think.
and it is also worth mentioning that Devin Singletary officially out. So Tyron Tracy took all the workload. He is running this entire season, had a positive gain on every single touch in the game. 18 carries, 129. Was really, really impressive, to say the least. Eric Gray fumbled basically on the first possession. They returned it for a touchdown. And after that, they were like, all right, Tyrone is going to get all the touches the rest of the way. And he made the most of it. So him being 7,400 is very solid value. I know for a fact in our prime time, he's going to be in our lines. And being a 4-2 build, like you mentioned, it's just really easy to click on him.
Yeah. Do you have? I mean, Chase Brown being questionable is,
He's expected to play, but for 8,600, I'm not spending that high, especially with Zach Moss ended up playing. Both of them should be not limited, but
right. Neither of
just
them.
splitting
They hurt
carries
each
and
other.
who's going to score. Hopefully not either, and we can just ride with the passing game of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Do you have any cheap guys that you want to get a little bit of?
Still want to mention Eric All, being 3,600, and he just basically forgets every single week. Last week, essentially every start this year, he has caught.
Yes.
14 out of 14. Very impressive to see. Also want to mention he doesn't have a stat this year, but without Malik Neighbors in terms of snap share, who stepped in? Jalen 7% of the snaps. Last week he did not have a target. Uncomfortable to play, but if you did want to spend up on a lot of guys, him being
Right.
only 2,000 and knowing that he's going to get upside of 70% of the snaps on a showdown slate, he is definitely in play.
Well, let's build a first look. I think it's pretty cut and dry who you're going to get to.
Right.
Which do you want to go Higgins? And I wouldn't probably go Higgins here, but would you like to
I don't know
go?
if we can.
Yeah, it's
I
expensive.
think we could try, but
Daniel Jones is an option. Wandale's an option.
put in
Tracy.
Tracy and Slayton, and let's see, about 4,400. Let's see.
I throw Hyatt in there. You have 69.
Yeah, that's not really
Not enough.
There's not really anybody that they're putting in the mid range
What about?
on showdown sites
Oh
this year.
man, but that's so gross.
If you take out Eric Hyatt and went with Eric All or Mike Gesicki, then you could basically pick whatever kicker you want.
Yeah.
Eric Gray is still in play as well.
Yeah, he's gross, but he's down there.
He is gross, but 3 catches, 50 yards last week. Theo Johnson had a boom game last week. That's something that we've brought up before. Evan McPherson, I think, is definitely in play.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that was basically my thought on a first look.
Perfect. I like it. Do you have another build? Let's try. Actually, I want to try something. It's going to be gross, but you're just going to have to bear with me.
That's fine.
We're going to start by. No.
Oh, okay.
Well, sort of. He's
captain.
Yeah, he's mid-tierish. Jamar goes in that, and then you have to play Daniel Jones. Oh wait, no, you don't have to play Daniel Jones. Just kidding. Do we want to?
Hmm.
Or do we just want to say Slayton at 66, 54, 50 gives us grossness. Okay, so
Put in what if we went to Slayton at captain instead of Tracy
okay,
and still played Tracy
and play Jones.
and then played Jones and then played the last guy in being whoever it is. What would that be? Jalen Hyatt.
Jane
That'd be
Hyatt
a 4-2 build
on the other side,
on the other side.
but still, it's like that's where the value's at. The value's actually on the Giants more so
If
than
you
the Bengals.
I'm pulling up the values right now, but I believe if I remember correctly, Tanner Hudson, this is his first game back from injury.
Yeah,
I
he's your guy.
believe he is the highest value um, on Roto for this slate. I'm pulling that up. It's actually Charlie Jones now, being 7x value at minimum price. Uh, doesn't make you feel comfortable, but if you're actually like guys that will actually play and get snaps, Jalen Hyatt is number one.
Where's Yoshi Boss?
Yoshi is where's Yoshi? He's 52. No, he's 44. So
Okay, I think that's viable too.
it is viable. He's still his snap share has just been north of 80%, but the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks his targets have kind of been tapered off a little bit. But yeah, he's definitely in play for a Cincinnati if you're going 4-2 to their side.
What about this? Because I think this is definitely a way to build it. 74, 66.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
That is perfect.
Did that math in my head, so I didn't think it was going to work, and it did.
That is good.
So you get Joe Burrow, you
we're
get 2
definitely
pass
getting one.
catchers, a kicker. That's a full correlation right there. And then you
That's a
get
very nice build.
our favorite New York Giants. Wow, that worked out perfectly. Love that. But yeah, if there's no questions, guys, let me go check and make sure, because if there's no questions, we will be getting out of here, going and finalizing
Caleb Williams
lines.
with 4 passing touchdowns on the day.
Keenan Allen with his second. You are lucky. You are lucky.
I don't care.
Like
our best balls are lucky too.
Yeah, they are. Hell yeah. I tried to trade him last week and no one wanted him. That's what they get. Screw you, Vic. I wanted a running back because I literally am playing Trey Sermon and Antonio Gibson, who I picked up both this week.
Yep, both
Flyers, because they're going to start this week, so it'll be fun. But yeah, that's a cool line. Let me stop sharing and we can get out of here.
Yeah, and again, I did mention like primetime slate looks really fun now that we know the injury news that we do, and we'll probably finalize that an hour roughly before that lock, which is I think 7:15.
Yes.
So keep an eye on Discord for that. We're going to be building lines again. We're going to be playing like 4 to 5 on the main slate, some early only, afternoon only. Showdown tonight, primetime. We like to play it all, and we're going to give you everything that we end up investing in today.
Absolutely. So we will hopefully y'all get in our Discord if you haven't yet. But if you have, we will see you in there. And if not, we will see you next weekend.
Appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Take
y'all
care,
have a good
guys.
one.
Let's have a fun one.